Could his fate have turned out differently? Or maybe everything was predetermined. He felt like he was sinking into the abyss. He fell into the void and at the same time remained in place. And when I opened my eyes, I found myself in the middle of a waking nightmare. Death overtakes them one after another, mercilessly and quickly, pathetic toys in the hands of a monster. But ahead there is only a cliff. You just have to look down and your head starts spinning. People run away and hide like rats, each praying to their gods, hoping that the monster will pass by. Just not me. Thoughts rush through the victim's head. She tries not to breathe, but hears the steps of the beast. The game of hide-and-seek is over. She sees before her an ugly face with a slit, toothy mouth. The blood runs cold. Fear paralyzes and deprives her of strength. Prayers are useless, but still she asks for mercy. The last survivor hears a terrible chomping sound, the cracking of bones, and this is the first test on the Phantom Star for beginners. He looks at his watch. Only 5 minutes. He needs to hold out here to complete the task and get his class. For an ordinary person, even a minute in this hell can seem like an eternity. His name was Zhang Kai, and he was being tested on the Phantom Star, the name of the planet that appeared in Earth's orbit from deep space. Surprisingly, the giant's gravity did not affect the Earth. Now the Earth and the Moon have become satellites of a new planet the size of Jupiter. It emitted an unusual, ominous light, and as soon as it hit animals or plants, they changed irreversibly. Thus the divine beasts appeared and the whole world plunged into chaos. Humanity resisted desperately, but it was more like death throes, as senseless and useless as modern weapons. There was nothing on Earth to resist such a threat, and humanity found itself on the brink of extinction. But then, in the darkest hour, many portals appeared. After passing through the gate, people arrived in the world of the Phantom Star, in the form of their digital copies. On the other side of the veil, they saw a world with different laws of physics, and realized that it was a simulation. Flying islands, huge animals in the sky, unusual plants, a world untouched by civilization. Everything became a game. Everyone received their own class, which differed in characteristics, skills, equipment, leveling up, and abilities. They then discovered that after reaching a certain level, they could return to Earth with these powers. Having gained such power, people are able to defeat monsters and protect the Earth. Such are the conditions for survival. Humanity had to pass the test. Those who decided to go to the Phantom Star began to be called Seekers. Kai was one of them, a newcomer, and the monster killed everyone who arrived in the testing area with him. He had already seen a long shadow. The monster was deliberately moving slowly to scare the victim more. It had nowhere to run anyway. Kai gritted his teeth. Had he really spent all his family's money in vain just to die here? His brother and sister supported him and worked hard to save up for the transition. My sister had to work after school for pennies and endure bullying. His brother worked on a construction site despite being diagnosed with kidney failure, which could not be cured without emergency surgery. He didn't want to die here without getting his class. When he heard a loud roar of mad delight, the monster threw his weapon. Rather than simply wait for death, the boy took a risk and ran into the abyss, the projectile whistling past and cutting his shoulder. Kai fell off the cliff. He was flying into the void. This was his last chance. The freak screamed in disappointment as his prey slipped right from his clutches. But then the allotted 5 minutes passed. He got his chance in a million and called up the system window. The system awarded him the hidden class of gamer. When he got to his feet, he saw a stake stuck out next to him, which the cannibal had thrown. He was lucky. He did not receive any damage from the fall, and the wounds healed on their own. The system beeped loudly again, and the space in front of Kai was illuminated by a bright light. From the flash appeared the image of a divinely beautiful girl. She said that having received the class, he was healed. The guy decided that she was an artificial intelligence of the Devil Star, and the goddess did not object, and congratulated him on the change of class. His class talent was a multiplier. All rewards and penalties were doubled, and there was a chance to get a reward 10 times bigger, but only 1 in 100. In addition, at the moment of the award, the first talent worked, and he immediately received the second. The attraction of unprecedented generosity did not stop. Critical hit damage has been increased by 200 times, with every 1,000th hit being fatal. For receiving the class, he was given 40 characteristic points. Although ordinary players received only 20, they were also affected by the doubling. For each level, he will receive more points, as many as 20, which means he will grow twice as fast as the others. He was especially pleased with the crit. Normal players had double damage, but he had 200 times more. Although the initial chance of a crit was low, only 1 in 1,000, but by raising it you can become a real cheater, Kai rejoiced. He walked up to the weapon that the monster had dropped. Kai had originally planned to simply change his class to earn money faster. Even with the most basic class, you can earn money on the Phantom Star, but he couldn't even imagine that he would become the main character after receiving so many cheats. This is just the beginning. The system informed him that he must reach the starting city to complete the task. The task can only be completed after going a long way. He looked at the map. The main goal was to reach the city of the gods in 7 days. Kai rushed like lightning through the jungle. Getting to your destination is difficult. The Newbie zone is overrun with hungry monsters, and dying is considered a failure, and you are returned to Earth. The real body on Earth will not be harmed in any way, even if you die here, and you can get to the Phantom Star again. For the rich, it's a piece of cake. Reloading a copy costs a fortune, so poor people like Kai only have one shot. At that moment, the guy heard a loud and shrill scream. Very close. The voice seemed familiar to him. Kai instinctively hid behind a tree. The viper opened its mouth wide and rushed at the other seeker. A strong-looking guy screamed like a girl when he saw not the most terrible creatures. He waved his fists wherever he could. His name was Yuan Ju, and since childhood the boy hated and turned pale at the mere mention of such slippery creatures. Kai looked out from his hiding place. It was indeed his childhood friend, who was trapped surrounded by poisonous snakes. Kai shouted to his friend not to be afraid and without thinking rushed forward. Ju was surprised to see his comrade here in the forest when he was already saying goodbye to life. He shouted at him to go away and leave him because the poisonous snakes were dangerous. But the hero told his friend not to worry and threw his spear at the crawling reptile that jumped from behind. In one fell swoop, he pinned the snake, which greatly surprised Ju, who froze in place with his mouth open. And Kai continued his attack, his friend doing a great job of acting as bait, allowing him to attack from blind spots. But the monsters, seeing a strong enemy, switched to the guy, who was now left without a weapon. Ju said to run. The vipers had a high agility stat, even though they were snakes. But the hero instantly changed direction and dodged all attacks. Ju was surprised when he saw his friend moving. The first-level snakes couldn't harm him. Kai told his friend to distract the vipers to deal damage. Only a minute passed before Kai dealt with all the crawling vermin. The gamer class gave agility, but not enough strength, although the first-level vipers died with 1 hit. The iron spear he held in his hands added 6 units to his strength. In this system, strength increased attack damage. Ju happily grabbed his friend and squeezed him so hard that his ribs cracked. He was terribly glad that they survived. Kai broke free from the bear's clutches and said that he was just lucky to get the gamer class, but no one should know about it. Then his childhood friend proudly told him that he had received the rank of martial arts master, the 5th strongest in the ranking, and that this had saved him. No one knew exactly how many classes existed on the Phantom Star, but the quality depended on the materials the newbie had with him. The rich spend millions of credits on special materials, and thus get the best classes: warrior, knight, assassin. The poor remain poor even in this game. They do not have the means to get a better class. The profession of a martial arts master costs at least 50 million credits. Ju didn't have that kind of money, and the big guy promised to tell him about it later. The money earned in this world can be exchanged on Earth, so Kai hoped to help his family. Minerals, remains, weapons and armor, everything can be sold. Dead monsters turn into cards that can be sold or traded. He took the dead snakes, his first trophies. Judging from the battle, his gamer class was superior in effectiveness to the martial artist class, Kai thought. But then they heard a rustling in the bushes and stopped. Ju screamed in fear, fearing vipers. A pretty girl in shabby clothes came out of the forest, introduced herself as Sunuan, and asked to join their team. However, the hero immediately refused. It was difficult for them themselves, and it would be even more difficult with her. But the girl did not lag behind him. She can heal their wounds because she has a healer class. She was almost in tears and promised to extract the snake's venom and improve their weapons. Nuan didn't want to be abandoned here, even though her class wasn't combat. Ju was delighted. Strengthening and healing at the same time is cool. Kai also thought about it. A healer is one of the 10 useful professions. In this test, it is really useful to have a healer in the squad. He himself almost died. He was simply saved by the system last time. After carefully weighing everything, he accepted Su Nuan into the team and they shook hands. The girl thanked him for this. Ju suspected that his brother had assessed the girl's qualities and virtues completely differently, and that was the only reason he changed his mind. But he received an elbow in the rib. At the same time, on Earth, in the city of Zhangzong, where the 18th portal to the Phantom Star was located, ordinary life was going on. Thanks to wristwatches, scientific observers could determine the exact position of the novice searchers. Inspector Lan wanted to know how her sister was doing, who was taking the rookie test. A colleague reported that most of the newcomers had already passed a rigorous selection process, but her sister had managed to survive, and was now on a team with 2 seekers. Lan snorted in disdain. Her sister was being a weakling and joining the team even though she was told not to. Because the more newbies gather together, the more monsters they attract. This is exactly what happened. The monster crept up quietly. It knew the habits of people. Seeing its prey, the monster bared its crooked, toothy mouth. The boys didn't notice that the monsters had gotten too close. 3 minutes later, Sulan realized that her worst fears had come true, as the watch detected two humanoid monsters next to her sister. Even one was more than enough to kill a group of newcomers, and two at once was a death sentence. Dying on the Devil's Star is the same as losing a character in the game. The body will not receive any damage, but the experience itself can hurt much more, filling the heart with sticky fear. Lan saw such victims in hospitals. The impression of how the body was devoured piece by piece was forever stuck in their memory. Sulan didn't wait and decided to prepare Nuan for psychological tests, even though her assistant told her that the girl was still alive. Lan was surprised. It was only a matter of time before her sister returned from the other world. The assistant himself could not believe what he saw, but the two humanoid monsters were already dead. "How is this possible?" Lan screamed throughout the lab. 3 minutes ago, the ghouls rushed at them like they were possessed. It was the first time Zhu encountered such a monster, so he ran without looking back. Nuan recognized the humanoid freaks. The gamer turned around. The enemies, despite the awkwardness of their skinny bodies, were moving faster than the boys. At this rate, they would be snatched up like rabbits. He stopped. "You can't just leave your own, even if it was just a game." Zhu looked at him in amazement. Now was not the time for jokes. But the hero was already preparing to meet the enemy in order to buy them some time. As the monsters approached, he jumped, swinging his spear hard. The first giant received a counterblow to the chest, and the spear pierced his body. But unfortunately, the wound was not fatal. He did not have enough strength. But the monster hit him so hard that the guy flew away. Unfortunately, he was unable to kill the monster with one blow. And now the creatures grinned with crooked mouths and reached out to him with raking paws. If he had killed one of them with the first attack, he would have dealt with the second one. But now he had reached his limit. Nuan couldn't help but scream and told Zhu that she wanted to save Kai. The big guy was breathing heavily. Even though he had received the martial arts masterclass, fighting monsters was not the same as fighting people. At this time on Earth, his mother brought instant coffee to her guest. This man gave Zhu the materials, despite Zhu's timidity and cowardice. His mother knew him better than anyone. Even though her son looked strong and powerful, he would hardly dare to fight with monsters. The guest reached for a paper cup. She was right. Her son really was a coward, said the old man in the hat. But he had an amazing quality. He never abandoned his own in trouble. And so it happened. The guy struck with a battering ram and knocked two monsters off their feet at once. He acted in the right way. The monsters would catch up with them anyway, so it was better to fight together. Zhu shielded his friend from the monsters with his broad back, feeling hurt that he was considered weak. "Brothers must fight together," Zhu said bravely, but he no longer trembled before the freaks. "Fight together and die together," he added, and his crushing attack pierced the monster's belly. Kai closed his eyes from this blinding attack. He himself did not expect this. The big guy defeated the beast with one swing. It's surprising that he took enough damage. Maybe it's because he has martial arts, Kai thought. At the same time, he felt the healing effect of Nuan's ability. The girl told him not to move. The hero asked what she was doing here, since her class was not for fighting. But the girl proudly declared that a real doctor should not run away when there is a wounded person, no matter how scared she is. Her father fought off the onslaught of many monsters, and died only because he was left alone without the support of the healers who had fled. "So at the moment when her team needs support, how can she escape?" the girl screamed. Kai felt his health rapidly increasing, his wounds completely healed. Now he really was not afraid of death. Taking his spear, the hero rose to his feet. However, now, even considering that there were 3 of them, they still couldn't deal enough damage to break through the beast's defense. Kai remembered that the healer could obtain snake venom to apply to the weapon, which would enhance its attack. So he immediately took out the snake from his storage and called Nuan. He asked her if she could treat Zhu and use poison at the same time and handed her a viper. Nuan wasn't sure, but she promised to try and do her best. There was only one way to win if Kai calculated everything correctly. Zhu put up shields and held the line. He was a natural tank, strong and resilient, doing what Kai couldn't do. Kai's attack wasn't enough to defeat the beast, but Nuan was a healer who could boost the attack. Now they had the classic combo tank support and monster slayer. When the poison was absorbed into the cop, the hero rushed to attack. So what if the newbies were weak? He asked Zhu to engage the beasts in combat in order to open an attack window. And the friend, without hesitation, gave his all while they worked together, capable of anything. Everyone simply had to follow their role on the battlefield. The big guy hit so hard that the beast's ugly head swung back. So what if the humanoid beast is called a rookie killer? The hero soared upward. He pinned the monster with an iron spear, and this time the blow hit home. When the first freak stopped twitching, the second froze. He still had the beginnings of intelligence, with which he understood the threat. Teamwork overcame each other's weaknesses, and now there was only one enemy left. The beast spread its paws. The guys attacked almost simultaneously. Nuan supported them both. Sister Lan couldn't believe her eyes. but the beast's tracks had disappeared from the radar. Her younger sister's team had actually defeated them. Her assistant checked earlier. Nuon had no combat skills, and the seekers next to her were also ordinary first-level beginners. By all indications, the only monster slayer that could be Kai was Kai, but what was strange was that they couldn't recognize his class. Someone who could defeat 2 humanoid monsters, Lan was amazed, and who had a hidden class, he immediately interested her. Kai put the animal cards in the storage after they appeared. After the battle, all 3 of them simply fell to the ground exhausted. The big guy laughed and said that he was lucky with his brother, because they had just barely survived. Nuon was encouraged. If they could deal with the humanoid beasts, the rest of the journey would not be a problem for them. Ju agreed with her. Kai also agreed with them. They had no need to rush. There was enough time to reach the starting city. So there is no need to go there right away, the gamer suggested to his astonished comrades. If they get extra points and place in the top 3, they will be rewarded with equipment. The army has excellent equipment. It helps newcomers in development on the Phantom Star. Now they could kill animals, and the more they did, the higher the chance of getting into the list of the best rookies and more points. So why not first reap a rich harvest and then also receive the army's reward? Kai asked them and grinned. He again made his comrades wonder. His adaptability was amazing just a few moments ago. They were on the verge of death. A few hours later, they were putting themselves at risk again, the insecure big guy becoming bait, even though he was very wary of snakes. He heard their forked tongues hissing and how they crept up on him, imagining their death by poison. The hero sat in ambush on a tree, told him to calm down, because he was a martial arts master who could fight and fight back. Moreover, the cutie Nuon was by his side, ready to cure them at any moment. But the big guy was only thinking about finishing this quickly, and then the snakes made their attack. Kai jumped lightning fast to intercept and killed the first viper. Their movements, although sharp, were predictable. According to the rules of the Phantom Star, whoever kills a monster gets experience. And since Kai was the only one who could deal damage, he killed first. The vipers noticed the new target and immediately switched to it, making a threatening hiss. The gamer used this to be the first to improve his skills. They fought the snakes all day until night, so that even the timid bear managed to overcome his phobia. It was like swinging on a boar. So the hero got the second level. His talent doubled the points, so all the efforts were worth it. Nuon congratulated him on his promotion, and Ju asked what had changed with the new level. Kai couldn't resist bragging that he had received 20 stat points, and now he had more than 50. It was equivalent to leveling up 5 levels at once, so it was no wonder his companions were outraged. No one had grown that fast. Of course, the big guy knew that with increasing levels, strength, agility, constitution, and mental strength increase, but his friend received more. Nuon was also stunned by the total points. At just level 2, he was 4 times ahead of other newbies. Kai explained to them that all these are properties of his class. Yes, the rewards are doubled, but along with them the risks also increase. He asked to keep it a secret. The girl immediately realized how powerful and cheating this class was, and Ju stamped his foot in frustration. His martial arts master class now seemed ordinary. Then a goddess appeared, who gave the hero his class, and said that upon reaching the second level, beginners receive a skill, and he received 2. I wonder if he will have 2 wives too, Kai thought, and was surprised that the class skills also doubled. More cheats for the god of cheats, the big guy exclaimed enviously. The first skill he received was called Ghost Hand, which essentially enhanced the throw of anything that looked like playing cards. The second skill increased concentration and range of vision. Although Kai did not know how to use it, the system clearly pushed him towards long-range combat. The hero told his comrades that he had become stronger, and now they could hunt monsters with more experience and risk. 2 days later, Lan was still standing at the tactical screens, watching her sister and her companions. Her assistant told her that he himself did not expect Nuon to survive 2 days later. Lan agreed. She realized that the rookie team survived together because Kai had gained his powers. The soldier burst into the post and shouted to everyone responsible for the newcomers to be on guard because they were in great danger. This warning made everyone flinch and turn around. Intelligence has discovered that their opponents from Country L have sent raiders to attack the newcomers, and they are expected to raid the starting area. Commander Wei Ying ordered everyone to be on full combat alert. Lan asked him for confirmation that it really was a raid, since her sister was there. If it was a lie, he wouldn't have come here, Commander Wei replied. Attacking raiders with a special class is extremely dangerous for beginners because they specialized in killing. Advanced players cannot and should not enter the beginner zone so as not to interfere with their progress. But the raiders of Country L have special skills that allow them to pass through the barrier and enter the territory of other countries that cannot counterattack. In addition, the raiders use particularly brutal methods of murder and torture to provide an unforgettable experience and eliminate the player forever. Their goal was to instill fear of the Phantom Star in newcomers, which significantly reduced the number of new seekers. Lan slammed her fist on the table. "Damn, my sister won't be able to stand this kind of abuse. These monsters will break her," she said. Commander Wei ordered them to be prepared for a mental examination of the newcomers. The raid of the raiders had already begun, and there would be no survivors. Meanwhile, the three friends made their way through the forest, unaware of anything. Kai stopped when he heard a rustling sound that no one else noticed and swung his spear in that direction. Ju was puzzled because they came straight from there. Nuan also did not see anything in the dense forest. But Kai's new ghost eye skill illuminated his target, so he threw the spear without thinking. A steel bolt thrown with superhuman force pierced the dense undergrowth and found its target. Kai immediately ran to check, while the big guy was doubting whether his friend had gone crazy from throwing sharp objects in this darkness. When they came out into a small clearing, they saw a boar there. The spear pierced its chest and reached the very heart. Ju was amazed again. His friend definitely had the eye of an eagle to hit a target at such a distance, and a strong one at that. There was nothing surprising about this. His new skills complemented each other. The card thrower enhanced any throw. The ghost eye improved his vision. Now he could kill low-level monsters without the risk of being detected. There was only a little left until the third level, and they continued the hunt. The raiders walked along a turbulent stream that came down from the mountains, the sound of water on rocks hiding any presence. That's why the trio noticed the enemies only when they themselves appeared from the water. The scoundrels looked happy. Now they had something to play with. The hero immediately suspected something was wrong. Ordinary players would not hide in the river. Who are they? The robber grinned wryly. They weren't bad people at all. They would just perform an autopsy and hang him from a tree to dry out. If you remove the skin from a person, the smell will attract a humanoid monster, who will definitely appreciate such a prank. The raiders laughed and surrounded the newcomers. Kai saw another raider appear from the water, wearing a cap like Robin Hood. "The captain of the second raiding team, all of Shenyao's newcomers will die today," he said, to make things even more scary. Nuan shuddered. She understood what kind of people these were. She heard her sister's stories about raiders who infiltrated the newcomers' zones and eliminated them. Her scanner also showed that all of them were at least level 3, and their captain was already level 5. There were many raiders and quarter-level ones. This alone inspired fear of inevitable defeat. The hero gritted his teeth. Not only were there many enemies, but their captain was also a level 5. His current abilities allowed him to fight a level 4, but not a level 5. He shouted to his comrades to run away together, to buy him time and divide the enemies. Fighting in the open with everyone was a sign of feeble-mindedness. The captain of the raiders chuckled. Shenyao's men are running away like cowardly goats. He sent 2 of them after the lone wolf, while the rest were to deal with a couple of newcomers. The bandits smiled contentedly. The victim was fast, but not fast enough to break away from them. However, when they found themselves in an open clearing, their target disappeared, and they took a defensive position, back to back. They also enjoyed the game of hide and seek, and the villains promised to cut off the boy's feet when they found him. Kai threw a spear at them, and the freak in the motorcycle goggles raised his sword to defend himself. The prey resisted, which only added to the excitement. But despite his complete confidence, the serve was so powerful that it literally swept the attacker off his feet. His partner was also surprised by this turn of events. Everything did not go according to script. When the dust cleared, he finally saw his partner, pinned to a tree like a cockroach. 1 hit, 1 kill. A true hero emerged from the trees. If he had 2 spears with him, he would have finished already. His enemies weren't as strong as he expected. The difference in levels was nothing to the main cheater of this story. The newbie from Zhenjiao killed a level 3 player. The raider stood in horror and began to frantically scan Kai. He didn't see all the information. The class was hidden, but the strength and agility indicators were simply off the charts. The combat power of a seeker was determined by the totality of his characteristic points. At level 3, a raider had only 45 of them. Kai threw the boar tusks he had picked up earlier at the raider so quickly that he didn't have time to move. All 3 hit their target, and the attacker fell to his knees. The hero appreciated the work done due to the difference in characteristic points. His level was equal to the 4th, so he won easily. The plan worked. His enemies died because they believed too much in themselves and their numerical superiority. The guy remembered his friends. He still lacked a few experience points to reach the 3rd level. As he remembered, if you kill a seeker, you can take his watch and loot before his virtual body disappears. Or he could get experience for them. Of course it was doubled. This was great news because seekers gave more experience than regular creatures. Kai chose the experience option, which was critically important at the moment. So the hero instantly received the 3rd level and felt his strength increasing. His stat points had risen by 2 levels again, and he was now above Raider Captain level 5. Having gained the power to return and save Ju and Nuan, a pleasant feeling spread through his veins. The raiders were in no hurry, and enjoyed beating up the two newcomers, the martial arts master class and the doctor class. They got some valuable loot. They were in no hurry, and let the girl heal the big guy's wounds, which only prolonged his suffering. That was their goal, to cause pain. Two raiders immediately ran after Kai, and the girl, even in this situation, was worried about him more than about herself. But his friend was adamant that Kai was fine. He only ever ran away when girls were chasing him, but not when his friends or relatives are in danger. It doesn't matter how desperate their situation seems, how many enemies there are, or how strong they are. The captain of the raiders ordered them to finish the preludes and to skin the newcomers. At that moment, the hero clearly saw everything in the night forest with his ghostly vision. He ran and jumped, throwing short darts at the enemies. They whistled like a bullet and killed the raiders who were closest to Ju and Nuan. The girl was amazed by this throw. 2 targets in the head at once. She recognized this weapon. The big guy grinned and felt a surge of strength. He had no doubt that his friend would return. The captain looked in confusion in the direction from which his raiders had been attacked. He could not see anything in the forest and felt vulnerable. The real hero put down another scoundrel, and the captain began to look around anxiously. Fear stuck its sticky fingers into his stomach and twisted his intestines into a knot. If Shen Yao opened a class that allowed entry into the newbie zone, this was the end. He must survive and tell about it, decided the captain of the raiders, and rushed away, having come up with a convenient excuse. Cutie Nuan watched in confusion as the previously fearsome enemy ran away with his tail between his legs, his cloak raised up like a dress. But Kai didn't even think of letting him go. Those who attacked his friends don't deserve to live. He sent the raider straight to hell with a cannon throw of his iron spear. The big man Ju no longer had the strength to hold on and fell to his knees, with the bodies of the raiders lying nearby, spread out in ridiculous positions. Kai came out of the forest. The raiders were finished, and he came to check on his comrades. Cutie Nuan looked okay, but the big guy was badly injured, and the stress caused the girl to run to him to help. She could no longer support the health of a guy who was in pieces. Ju had an amazing ability to sense drama. He knew that this was the very moment when the hero abandons his dying friend in order to avenge him later. Death, just the death of a virtual body. But he had always dreamed of playing out a scene like this, so his voice sounded weak and quieter with each word. Nuan was the first to be moved to tears, after all. She was a fragile girl in body and soul. This added emotionality to the scene. Everything went as it should. But Kai didn't appreciate the theatrics, and threw the body of the half-dead raider right at his friend, which almost killed him. He deliberately left 6 raiders unfinished, so that his friends could gain experience, level up, and regain their full health bar. In any case, these non-humans just tortured them, so it would be fair to give them everything back and then finish them off. Kai smiled sweetly. The enemies had to learn what a twist of fate was, and upon hearing these words, the friends also smiled. Hearing their words, the unfinished raider came to his senses and opened his eyes with difficulty. When she looked at their faces, she belatedly realized what evil she had done. After all, gifts are usually returned. The raiders from Country L came to their senses one by one. They were horrified by what had happened. Many had lost their precious experience points. It was also a surprise to their command. The enemies could discover a class that could resist the raiders and torture them in return. At the same time, the assistant informed Lan that, judging by Nuan's watch, her group had encountered raiders. Lan shuddered and involuntarily began to scream. Her sister was not yet ready for this. The raiders were especially cruel to girls. Commander Wei ordered to accept the inevitable. Not a single group of newcomers has ever escaped from the raiders. They will all require psychological rehabilitation. But the assistant, with a satisfied look, informed everyone that the newcomers not only did not die, but were also able to increase their level. This news stunned everyone present, who were already preparing for the worst. Commander Wei didn't understand how this was possible, because it was unthinkable that raiders would help newcomers kill monsters. If Nuan had killed monsters, her experience would have grown gradually, but she gained 2 levels at once, in one leap. This means that Nuan most likely killed the raiders, and upon hearing this, Commander Wei demanded all of her team's data. Of the 3, only Kai's class remained hidden, making him the prime suspect for this anomaly. They all reached the 3rd level, without killing the raiders. It was simply impossible. Commander Wei was jubilant. But Lan objected that not everything was clear. The sister was a fighter. The martial artist was weak at the initial level. It was unthinkable that Kai would kill everyone. Commander Wei trusted his instincts. Jiang Kai was the cause of this anomaly, even though his class was hidden. The assistant with glasses found the reason why they couldn't get information about Kai. Usually searchers wear a watch that can be used to check the data. But Kai is using a 1st-generation watch, which is very outdated, which is why it was so difficult for them to get his data. Lan was very surprised that there were people who used such ancient technology. Commander Wei ordered them to gather all the information about this guy. He really wanted to meet him in person. Ju had fully recovered. He himself didn't expect that he would be healthy after leveling up. Nuan leveled up and was very happy about it. The big guy couldn't hold back his puppy joy. He received the ability of Earthquake and could attack enemies around him. And Nuan improved her healer skills. Kai expected her to obtain a skill of her class. But although Nuan didn't have any fantastic abilities, they were all very practical. Ju decided that now that he was one level higher than Kai, he would be able to beat the raiders next time, just like his friend. Kai showed his stats. Beating the level 3 raiders would be unthinkable, especially without his double stat points. The big guy grabbed his head. His friend again passed him. Although he had just been level 2, now he corresponded to the 8th level of strength. Kai explained to them that when he escaped, he was a level 2. He killed the 2 that chased him and got a 3rd, and then killed the level 5 captain. The fighter was lagging behind again and couldn't come to terms with it, and Cutie Nuan asked Kai what they would do next. Kai thought he heard that the captain led only one of the raiding parties. That's why they couldn't miss out on such valuable experience points that they themselves wandered into the newbie zone. Half a day later, they found another group of raiders. Their levels were higher. The fighters were not particularly hiding, although they knew that the second team had died. Their captain is also a level 5 and has put the raiders under siege. They must be on guard no matter what. But no one heeded his warnings. The maximum level that could be raised in this zone was the 5th. They all already had it, and there were many of them. The company hid in the bushes. Ju still doubted whether it was worth attacking and fighting. There were 3 times more enemies. They should just leave. The hero reassured his comrades with his abilities. Even if he couldn't kill the enemies, he could still protect them. Besides, the other newcomers were under threat. Instead of sitting still and waiting for fate, Kai preferred to grab Luck by the tail and rush into the attack first. The leader of the raiders was the first to notice the target, which was rapidly approaching them. The raiders immediately scanned the newcomer and noticed that he was level 4, while regular newcomers could not be higher than level 2. It was probably one of those who attacked the other team, the leader decided, and sent everyone into battle. Catching such a newcomer was an important military achievement. Unfortunately for Kai, he failed to lead away only a few of the raiders. They kept the group together and moved together after him. Their original plan was for the hero to lure the enemies and for the big guy to use an earthquake, after which the enemies could be easily killed. However, now the opponents are very spread out and dispersed, so it is impossible to knock them all out at once. In this case, many raiders will escape his attack and the fight will drag on, and the outcome will become unclear. The decision had already been made, so if they wanted to destroy the raiders, they needed to act. Kai stopped and took his spear at the ready. To lure enemies, you need to shed a little blood. Seeing how the prey ran towards them, the pursuers also stopped. The raider decided that the prey was simply mad with fear and despair. Cold steel flashed and Kai felt his hand go numb. The raider grinned like a hungry hyena. But despite this, Kai continued to move forward, allowing himself to be surrounded. Now the enemies had gathered together. They were sure that they had cornered him like a beast. But they were still too far apart, so Kai jumped closer to engage them in combat. The gamer class gave him incredible agility, allowing him to move like an acrobat. The leader of the robbers became angry and ordered them to stop their cheap dancing. They were all level 5, but the newbie level 4 was somehow able to dodge all of the attacks. They scanned the guy again, sensing something was wrong. Their watches didn't allow them to see all the characteristics, only dexterity. The reading reached 30, which stunned the raiders, and they looked at the newcomer as a real threat. The leader winced. This had to be a mistake. This simply couldn't happen. An indignant murmur also went through the ranks of the raiders. At level 5, their agility barely reached 20 units. They simply wouldn't be able to catch the impudent newcomer. But the group's leader knew it was unlikely that there was anything wrong with the watch. Looking at the satisfied face of his opponent, he realized that he was only pretending to be cornered. The leader shouted to the others to get out of there because it was all a trick. The fools, who were used to fighting only against newcomers, froze in surprise instead of following the order. Kai also froze in the center of a bunch of idiots. He was finally able to gather them together. It was too late to run. When they looked up, they saw a body falling rapidly. Ju's strike caused the ground to shake and split, sending enemies flying into the air like go pieces when struck on a board. Ju had done his job well, and now the gamer could complete the rout. He moved faster than lightning. The raiders fell to the ground already dead, each with a nail in the skull. Kai snorted contemptuously. The villains allowed themselves to be killed in one go. Ju felt truly sad. Envy choked his throat when he saw this sight. He could only be indignant at the injustice of fate. The system counted the experience and reported that Kai had reached the maximum level. For each kill, he received double experience. His friends admired his achievements. But this was not surprising. because the system generously rewarded for killing Seekers. Kai also left them with 4 unfinished raiders and offered to send them home before they bled out. He didn't forget that thanks to his comrades, he was able to kill monsters first and raise his level, so now he could repay them. Now they could kill monsters until everyone reached the maximum level and only then leave the testing area. As they walked through the forest, Kai reminded them that they had to earn as many points as possible before they left the area. The closer they were to the barrier, the stronger the monsters were here. There might even be a boss, so they had to be careful. At that very moment, everyone heard a terrible howl coming from the darkness. There were several bodies of terribly strong humanoid monsters lying on the ground. They noticed many lacerated wounds on their bodies. It was scary to imagine what kind of monster could have crushed these creatures. Kai used his ghost eye to look around. Now he could see the golden traces of the creature that killed the monsters. Ju and Nuan were terrified. If such a beast was nearby, they were in danger. The creature attacked Nuan with the speed of a bullet, illuminating her with a bright flash. Ju also saw only a flash, which flew around like a snitch and attacked them. A golden clod of malice rushed towards the hero, who did not even move. Ju shouted at him to be careful. This golden ball could beat anyone to death. But Kai simply reached out and grabbed something soft and fluffy like a real catcher. He stared in bewilderment at the small, rodent-like monster, who was also quite surprised to find himself caught. His friends were amazed that he was able to catch something so fast and small. The hero looked at the fat rat in his hand. This beast was not at all fast for him. It is unlikely that the hamster understood what the man said, but rather felt it and began to loudly complain and move his paws comically. Kai simply let him go, and the furry little animal immediately believed in himself. To show this arrogant man that he could not be looked down upon, he released his ki. Moving along a broken trajectory, the aggressive rodent attacked Kai again. Ju screamed in horror. This monster killed 2 humanoid creatures. But Kai proved once again that he could be a great catcher for a team of broomstick lovers. He let the fluffy one go again. It was too slow for him. And then he did a dizzying trick and caught the hamster immediately after he released it. High agility and ghostly eyes. A good combination. Ju once again regretted that he was not the main cheater in this story. It would be like being Dr. Watson or Hidalgo. A few minutes later, the hamster admitted crushing defeat. Ju was indignant again. Not only was his friend a brazen cheater, but he also got himself a cute pet, so it wasn't far from being a girlfriend. Kai didn't know if this beast would be useful in battle, but they got the bodies of 2 humanoid creatures for free. He decided to give these to his comrades. They had very little experience left to finish them off to level 5, and he sat the hamster on his shoulder. Ju was completely taken aback by what was happening. His martial arts were nothing compared to his friend's strength. On the other side of the forest, another newcomer finally reached the border after several days and left the training area. The city of Shenzhou was stunning with its cyclopean walls and monumental structures. The man who was climbing the stairs seemed tiny. When he had completed the long and tiring climb, a guard appeared before him and congratulated the newcomer on completing the test, now becoming a seeker. Unfortunately for him, someone had already topped the newcomer rankings. The guard reported and immediately consoled him that ranks were not that important. The main thing was that he had passed the test. The newly minted seeker suddenly grabbed the guard and asked if he really wasn't first in the ranking. But why do they think he's not the best? The newbie chuckled, showing them an impressive stack of cards of killed monsters. The guards were surprised. Ranks were calculated for points. You could also get a lot of them for monsters, and this newcomer brought a whole mountain. He took off his hood and laughed smugly. The second heir of the great Huang family before the test on the Ghost Star, he underwent special training. The guards were amazed. His family was one of the 10 great clans. They welcomed the renowned seeker, who was sure to be among the top 10. The boy burst into laughter again in a fit of unbridled narcissism. This test was only the first step in his ascent. From now on, he only needed a little time, and then the entire Phantom Star would come under the control of his clan, he believed. At the same time, the trio of inseparable comrades were wandering in the depths of the forest. Kai was puzzled. It was strange that they were walking all alone. He thought that they would meet many strong monsters here, and he decided that perhaps they were all scared of his new pet, who was snoring sweetly in the hood. But then they heard an angry, drawn-out howl, and the friends turned around abruptly. Instead of one beast, a whole pack of shadow wolves came out to them. They were led by a fearsome white leader whose face was completely covered in scars. He was the boss of the Newbie zone. The friends quickly huddled together. Now the hero understood why he hadn't seen the other monsters. They had involuntarily entered the boss's territory. The wolves quickly surrounded them, and unlike the usual creatures of this forest, they were highly intelligent. Ju felt his lower back shrinking. In front of them was the strongest monster in the training zone, which had never been killed before. Meeting him was the worst thing that could happen. It's simple, Kai realized. The friends can't escape from the wolves, so they have to fight to the death and break through the monsters. He shouted to them to stick together to kill the leader. This was the only way they could win, and he rushed to attack first. The big guy didn't hesitate. In any fight, it's better to act and think later. The martial artist used his skill and shot up into the air like a rocket. He landed with a jolt, sending the wolves nearby flying in all directions. Nuan used snake venom on the hero's weapon when he gave the signal. Using his ghost eye and playing card thrower skills, Kai threw a poisoned projectile at the target. The leader bared his toothy mouth at the abomination flying towards him, but the attack didn't even scratch the furry beast. It only made him even more angry. Kai was left without a weapon, and the other wolves came to their senses and attacked them again. Their situation became dangerous as the leader controlled the pack, waiting for the opportunity to make the main attack. The guy gritted his teeth. He fought with a short dart. Now that they were surrounded, he could not reach the leader and kill him even more. At that moment, the turbo hamster woke up from a strong shaking and looked out with displeasure. Kai fought back as best he could, but there were too many wolves. And then the true king of the forest woke up, because he had already gotten used to the new place to sleep and did not like being disturbed. The golden bullet shot out in a broken curve and rushed towards the leader. Turbo Hamster squealed loudly and puffed out his cheeks with anger. Even the leader could not withstand such an onslaught and received a shallow wound in his tough skin. The hamster broke through the fur. Kai was pleasantly surprised by this event. With the help of the ghostly eye, he saw a hamster crawling away, having eaten its fill of fur and the wound it had made. Last time Kai hadn't penetrated his armor, but now the leader had an open spot, no more than a coin wide. But for Kai's skills this was enough, and he threw the dart. It struck right on target and penetrated deep into the wound, and the leader growled with effort. It all worked. Kai intended to continue throwing darts at the Achilles' heel. And then one of his projectiles scored a critical hit. The probability was 1 in 1,000, but it dealt 200 times the damage. Kai froze in place. The leader of the wolves simply exploded from such an attack. The system sent him a notification, congratulating him on the destruction of the forest leader. The hero thought that he would have to fight a protracted battle, aiming at the wound, but he scored a critical hit. The wolves, having lost their leader, tucked their tails between their legs. After so many battles, it is not surprising that the crit was knocked out, although it could have worked on a simple viper. The girl was the first to notice that the wolves were about to run away. They really were smart animals, but Kai didn't want to let them go. Now without a leader, they are just sheep full of valuable experience points and useful skins. Ju growled as a piece of flesh below his back was almost cut off. But then he used all the power he had. Cutie Nuan supported him, and the hero carried out the cleanup. The battle did not cause any more difficulties. They did not let the wolves escape. After a short time, they removed all the fluffy skins. The friends stopped to catch their breath. The entire forest was littered with carcasses. But the main thing was that they managed to defeat the hitherto invulnerable boss. Kai left many survivors behind, as before, so that his comrades could also gain experience. Now that they had leveled up, earned points, and received skins, they could head to the exit. Ju looked around with his mouth open when they arrived at the starting city. It was the most populous city belonging to their country, so there were crowds of people everywhere. Nuan noticed the hero's pet running away, clutching its cheeks. But Kai wasn't worried about it. The turbo hamster had already helped them, so he could be free. If they were destined, they would meet again. Afterwards, they proceeded to the scoring and reward center, where all the seekers had gathered. On the way to this place, Kai asked the guard guide to show him the ranking of all the newcomers. But then their path was blocked by a guy with a huge inferiority complex, the same one who boasted of his famous origins. Kai already knew this bastard, but he didn't expect to meet him so soon. A smug narcissist, he claimed to be number 1 while his friends were at the bottom of the list. Alongside narcissists with inflated egos, there are always clueless hangers-on who immediately begin to merrily hoot and taunt the newcomers. Sister Kai worked hard in Huang Wei's house to earn money to move to the Phantom Star. On top of that, the blonde scum bullied Kai and poisoned his sick brother, taking advantage of his weakness. Ju could not stand this ridicule. They were not on Earth, and he stood up for him. But Kai stopped his friend. Kai confidently informed everyone that the ranks would soon be revised, and the 3 of them would take the leading place. They stood back to back, as if they were once again surrounded by a pack of hungry wolves. But this only caused more ridicule from the scoundrel. He laughed like a hyena. How could the last 3 come forward? Kai gave them a signal, and Ju reached for his watch. He had been waiting for this for a long time. By pressing a couple of buttons, they showed thousands of cards with killed monsters. There were so many of them that the list was lost in the sky. The fools froze in amazement. They had never dreamed of such a number of monsters. But what shocked them even more was not only the number, but also the quality of the humanoid creatures, the shadow wolves. And the icing on the pie, a huge, ferocious wolf leader. Naturally, the narcissist with his inflated ego did not accept this. His flawed mind immediately came up with an excuse. This simply could not happen, he said. To which Kai smiled easily. Whether it was true or not, the system would judge them. A moment later, the update took place and the system calculated all their points. Huang Wei stared dumbfoundedly at the top of the list, from where he had just been kicked in the lower back. But that wasn't the end. Kai smiled again and asked the guard if the dead raiders were being counted. He dumped a dozen wristwatches in front of them and asked them to count them too. The guard confirmed that these things belonged to invaders from an enemy country. Huang Wei laughed nervously. This must definitely be a lie. The newbies can't defeat the raiders. He turned to everyone and asked them if they had seen the raiders. But among the survivors, naturally, there were no witnesses. That's why the blonde made the brilliant conclusion that since no one saw the raiders, then they didn't exist. And therefore all the merits should be nullified, and an investigation should be conducted. Then all the jackals began to put pressure on the guard, even though the accusation sounded absurd and there was material evidence. But then a new person intervened in the dispute, before whom everyone made way. The man said that the raid of the robbers was real, and they did not have time to warn everyone. Li Yun was also stunned when he first heard the news. He was the commander of the city, and was sent to meet Kai personally. The appearance of such a big shot here confirmed Kai's words, so the rich bastard had no arguments left. Li Yun reported that for his help in overcoming the crisis caused by the raid, the command instructed him to reward Kai's team. The official awards for second and third place were raised to mid-level ranks, and first place was awarded a prize above the highest level. Kai's eyes sparkled with happiness. Now he was absolutely sure that he had grabbed the god by the beard and very tightly. The friends were all over the moon and thanked me for it. It was nice to receive a reward for my efforts. For the rest of the blockheads, it was a shock to receive such equipment at the initial level. Envy strangled them with both hands. All subjects were habitually distributed according to rank, from the lowest to the highest and beyond. The middle rank reward was also not bad for a beginner, but the highest and super rank were the dream of every seeker. This is unfair, Huang Wei groaned. Kai not only received the highest award, he also deprived him of a place in the ranking. The plebeians cannot be better than the king. But Kai no longer tolerated the words of this arrogant man. If he has something to say, he can provide evidence. To which the scoundrel reached for the sword in his inventory. He considered himself entitled to continue insulting Kai and his family, calling them inferior. His brother is a beaten dog, his sister is a servant, and he himself is just trash on the side of the road who dares to climb over his head, Huang Wei said. He was carried away. Kai's sister was still working in Huang Wei's house, so Huang Wei was confident that he would break him. Kai drew his spear faster than anyone could notice and slipped past the villain like in those samurai movies. They swung almost simultaneously, but Kai was faster, and a scarlet wound opened on the bully's chest. But it wasn't just a defeat in front of everyone. The smug offspring of a rich family, who lived and trained in abundance, lost to a newcomer from nowhere. Huang Wei didn't expect that they would dare to touch him and began to threaten revenge. To which Kai harshly replied that only a monster would threaten his family, so he didn't care where he came from. No one interfered in their argument. After all, they were not on Earth. Kai approached Huang Wei and promised to do anything to him, pointing to the spear and whispering to the pig on the spit that he would definitely not forget any time soon. Without thinking twice, he pierced the digital image of the scoundrel who dared to touch his family, because family is the most important thing. The system informed him that he had received 6 experience points for killing a level 1 seeker. What a pitiful thing, Kai thought. This was not at all what he expected from the great clan. A murmur went through the ranks of the jackals. Even though the murder of the seeker on the Ghost Star was not real, touching the heir of the clan was madness. Li Yun understood why, despite his recklessness, Kai was the very person that the management was interested in. He spoke in front of everyone and suggested that everything be considered self-defense, or even an accident. He was walking, tripped, and there was a nail. It happens to everyone. Smiling at the trio, Li Yun asked them to follow him. They came to a beautiful gazebo in the middle of a deserted park. Li Yun apologized for the long wait and presented them with the weapons that the army had awarded them. Nuan was the first to open her chest. Inside was the Jade of Life, the dream of any novice healer. This stone added physical and mental strength to her characteristics and also enhanced her healer skills. Ju received leather armor that perfectly complemented his melee skills and tank role in combat. The black rhinoceros skin it was made from improved defense, added strength, and reduced damage taken, Li Yun explained. Everyone was happy with their purchases, but they were also eager to see what Kai had received. He opened his box last. 9 daggers, thin and sharp, so that they could be mistaken for hairpins. To see the properties of this weapon, access was required. Such identification cards were attached to weapons of the super highest grade. Li Yun had one. At first glance, the hairpins didn't look strong. Their attack was low and they added critical hit chance, so Li Yun didn't appreciate them. This didn't sound very good, so the friends asked Li Yun if the command could replace the prize. Although it was problematic, Li Yun agreed to help. He still wanted to win Kai over. However, Kai surprised them by saying that he got just what they needed and he would take the pins. This weapon is not a trap at all, but on the contrary, the best there is, considering the abnormal critical damage, which can defeat even the boss of the level. The system balanced this by making the crit chance 10 times lower, so Kai would rather die than get a crit. But the 9 pins in his hands leveled out this shortcoming. They could well be called an ideal artifact for the gamer class. Li Yun agreed to leave the daggers behind since Kai liked them. Now that the test was over, they could return to Earth if they wished. Before leaving, Li Yun worriedly warned that next time, someone might come for Kai. So when they return home, they need to be careful, he said and left. Kai returned to the slums, eager to tell his family how well he had passed the test. When he drove up to his house, he saw several expensive cars that stood out sharply among the others, and felt a vague sense of unease. He simply walked past, the euphoria of success still making his head spin and preventing him from thinking rationally. Kai came home and called everyone to tell them how his test went. They hadn't seen each other for several days. However, suspicious strangers were waiting for him at home, and they clearly did not come to preach the word of God. The bald-headed bandit smiled crookedly. They had been waiting for him for a long time, having heard about the incredible achievements in the test. Kai immediately recognized Huang, the eldest heir of the clan, and told them that he had not called the cleaners to the house. But he was immediately grabbed by the neck with force and pressed to the floor. 2 cabinets twisted his joints until they cracked, forcing Kai to bow. Huang stood up swinging his bat and said they had come to build the right relationship. Brother for brother was taken as a basis, said Huang, so they were in for a long and fascinating conversation. Kai killed his brother, removing him from the Phantom Star for a month, but Huang could eliminate him forever. His eyes flashed with anger and the heavy bat fell sharply on Kai's head. But there was no blow. Someone knocked down the doors to his house and they painfully cracked the 2 thugs who were holding Kai. They rolled comically inside and knocked down their boss, who fell awkwardly on his back. He should have been more careful, as he was warned, said the man who brought the doors down for him. It was Commander Wei himself. He was acting relaxed, as if he had come to his own home. Lan followed and ordered everyone to lie face down on the floor. Now it was the Ministry of Defense's business. Huang recognized the commander of the Wei military region. His appearance was completely unexpected. Wei told them that this guy now belongs to them, and the bandits touched those who shouldn't have. Huang immediately began to pretend to be the epitome of innocence, saying that he had simply come to visit an old friend and was worried about him. When Kai rose to his feet, Huang looked at him with a different look. But Kai himself would like to know why the entire district commander needed him. Huang's excuses did not save him from being detained by military police. Kai thanked them for saving him, but asked who would repair the doors. The commander ignored the question and said that he came here after hearing about his team's achievements in the test. Zhu and Nuan had already received an invitation to become part of the army, and Commander Wei had personally come to invite him. He had already guessed that Kai had a new class, which surprised the guy quite a bit. Lan asked if Kai understood what the appearance of a new class meant. There are many different jobs for Seekers, but every 20 levels you have to change it, which can weaken or strengthen. Most classes are useless in the later stages, so the army looks for new classes to increase combat power. His new class is obviously very strong, so Lan offered him a career in the army. They had no intention of forcing him, and regretted that they had to ask for his personal information for this meeting. Lan offered favorable conditions, protection and medical care for her brother, in exchange for his service, after which the commander decided to leave him to think. If Kai wanted to join them, he just needed to tell Lan. But before they left, Kai informed them that he would not be joining the army. They did not inspire confidence after leaving without paying the door fee. The commander and Lan were surprised by such an impolite and abrupt refusal. This was not what they had expected at all. Kai explained to them that he knew how great it was to join the army, but it was good for combat classes like martial artist or healer. But Kai was different. He got a new class and reminded them that the drunkard class was once highly valued by the army too. They then gave this class strong support, and its representatives quickly became successful. They basked in the rays of glory like idol stars. Many liked this class. But over time, the military's view changed and they reassessed. Now these people are indistinguishable from the homeless. Their current situation was deplorable. This time, Kai was too excited and let his guard down, but next time he will protect his family. They have been living together for 10 years, relying only on themselves, and are used to managing their own destiny. Lan sharply retorted that his new class could influence everyone. Society needed it. But Kai told her that he didn't want to do that and just wanted to protect his family. Lan would have continued to argue with him, but Wei stopped her. He said that he understood the guy and did not want to pressure him. Habits that took 10 years to form weren't something that could be changed in a day or two, but Kai had to understand that his brother didn't have much time left. Wei offered him a bet. He promised to protect his family from persecution, but Kai himself had to earn money for his brother's treatment. If he does this, Wei will accept his refusal, but if not, the army will pay his bills and accept him into service. The terms of the bet did not stipulate that Kai would lose anything if he lost, so he accepted them. Later that night, he left the house due to an argument. The hero had to return to the Phantom Star as quickly as possible. His note was left on the table. In order to feel safe, they needed to leave the Huang clan's territory and move to a more secure area. Kai walked through the narrow streets of the city slums and thought about how to make money. He arrived back at the starting city of Shenyu, which was very different from his area on Earth. It was clean. After passing the test, he became a seeker and could now buy better equipment, as well as earn money by killing monsters. Usually, seekers join guilds to earn money. On the Ghost Star, the monsters are unusually strong, so it is better for loners to join a group to avoid death. Guilds are gatherings of many adventurers. Fighting together and raising your rank isn't such a bad thing, so Kai looked into one of them to join. However, the girl at the counter immediately recognized Kai, and smiling a well-practiced smile, informed him that he could not join them. "It's all because he insulted the Huang family. He was blacklisted," she continued with a sweet smile. "And so, unless something unexpected happened, he would have to fight alone on the ghostly star." The girl pinned him down. Later, Kai arrived in an area on the outskirts of the city, from which one could quickly get to the hunting grounds. Because of his feud with the Huang clan, no guild would accept him. No one wanted to challenge the powerful people, so Kai looked puzzled. His adventure could have ended much sooner than he thought, but then someone noticed his worries and offered their help. A young girl with a fortune-teller class appeared before him and promised to choose the best place for him for only 100 credits. She stared at him persistently, but Kai looked doubtfully at the girl whose dress looked shabby and altered many times. Kai refused, after all. He didn't believe in gods, luck, and all that. But the girl did not want to let the newcomer go, and offered him a discount, and then even agreed to make a prediction for free. As soon as Kai heard the word free, he radically changed his mind and returned to her. The girl was amazed at his stinginess, but she decided to turn a blind eye to it and just treat it as a test of her abilities, so she simply took the fortune-telling board. She used her skills, and a flame and letters appeared in front of the board. The guy's situation was not easy, the girl read. Therefore, to avoid this, she suggested that he go to the Valley of the Kings and pointed to the portal. As he thought about it, he was indeed in danger because of his feud, but for some reason he thought that the rules of the safe zone would protect him from being killed. Usually newbies go to the Ash Plains until they reach level 10, but he will definitely be expected there. Another place was only accessible from level 15, but going there was madness. The Valley of the Kings that was offered to him was suitable for level 10 seekers. With his current strength, the hero should be able to handle it. It was unlikely that the Huang clan would ambush him there. Kai decisively slammed his fist into his palm. His first adventure would begin on the Royal Plains. He ran to the portal faster than the fortune-teller could tell him anything. But then it dawned on her that the guy had gone there alone, and not with a team. She quickly packed her things, hoping that the boy would not leave her a bad review after he was forced to return to Earth. The Royal Plains is a valley that stretches along picturesque mountain ranges, but Kai had no time to admire the vastness and beauty. He was tracking monsters. A loud roar echoed throughout the area, and he realized something was happening. As Kai approached, he saw a group of seekers fighting a huge gorilla, and they were getting hit hard. Their leader shouted for the seekers to hold their positions, but the monster simply swept them away. The giant black monkey was level 11 while the seekers were only level 10, but by working together they should be able to defeat it. The leader's suggestion worked, and the seekers once again rose to battle the monster. The battle looked intense. Kai wondered if he could defeat such a monster if he met him. But then, unexpectedly, 3 huge monkeys crept up on him in an open field. With the reaction of a mongoose, he withdrew from this meeting to which no one had invited him. After checking their level with the watch, Kai saw that these monkeys were even stronger. The team of seekers defeated their opponent with great effort, and now they were rejoicing in their victory. With just 4 of them, they were able to defeat a stronger monster without suffering any losses, which is a record worth bragging about, the seeker told the captain. He agreed, all thanks to their wonderful captain. The guy smiled when some noise was heard. Turning around, they saw one guy deftly eluding 3 macaques at once. The hero thought that he must have accidentally wandered into the territory of these monsters, which meant that now they would not leave him alone. The seekers watched in amazement as the lone warrior fought 3 monsters at once, each one a level higher than the one he had just defeated. The comrades asked the captain if they should help, but he called them fools. The guy was brave enough to go after 3 people once, but he wouldn't be able to defeat them. "And they will simply die if they go," said the captain. He wanted to get away from here, but then a loud bang was heard, and they saw a gorilla flying past who believed in himself. Kai grinned. He was holding the daggers in his hands, and finally his supercritical strike began to be thrown out more often. The Seekers were simply stunned as they watched the guy kill a level 12 gorilla with one blow. Despite the murder of their fellow, the stupid monsters continued their pursuit. Kai threw the dagger in mid-jump and it flew towards the target, leaving a bloody streak. With the help of hairpins, the probability of a critical hit increased by only 10%, but now it hit much more often. The search team was left speechless once again when they saw another murder. There was only one monkey left, from which Kai easily escaped. However, this monster was the strongest of them all, a level 14 gorilla. Kai had 3 daggers left, and he had already used up all his mental and physical stamina and would no longer be able to escape. Despite this, he believed that he would get a crit again and kill the monster. Kai turned around and threw 3 daggers at once. Along with them, he also threw the darts he had with him. With so many attacks, the knockout of a monstrous blow became inevitable. The monster simply exploded. Kai used everything he had, and the plan worked as expected. The last gorilla collapsed onto the green grass of the royal plains. Seeing this, the Seekers felt insignificant. They would need a team of 12 people to fight such a monster. Meanwhile, the guy collected his weapons. The battle turned out to be more difficult than he expected. And yet now he had 3 monster carcasses at once. So overall hunting alone shouldn't be difficult. The main thing was not to get caught. Without wasting time on a long rest, Kai left this place in search of other monsters. The captain exclaimed in disappointment. He had not had time to get to know the skilled craftsman and establish contact. It was all because his crew hadn't let him intervene in the master's fight, the captain complained, although it was entirely his fault. On the dusty plains, a small group of Seekers was surrounded by another. 3 martial artists, a soldier, a healer, and ordinary people immediately recognized the Seekers as the Falcon Squad from the Huang clan. They came here to look for Jiang Kai, but it seemed like they were wasting their time in the Newbie zone with their level 20. One of the masters grabbed the fortune teller in a shabby dress. He heard that she was the last one to see Kai. The villain squeezed the weak girl's throat and demanded to tell him where the boy was, but she did not answer, worrying about what they could do to him. The villains did not hide their evil intentions at all. Kai insulted their clan and they sought revenge. Then the girl said that they could find him on the royal plains. Having learned what the scoundrel wanted, he let the girl go, threatening her with punishment if she lied. There was a murmur among the crowd of Seekers. The Falcon Squad from the Huang clan was the strongest at level 20. The fortune teller cleared her throat. She was not worried at all, because she had managed to quickly predict the fate of these scoundrels. Fortune tellers never tell the truth to those who are rude. These fools had no idea that the most likely outcome of their pursuit would be death. After a day of hunting on the plains, Kai killed 16 giant monkeys and reached level 6. He heard that the carcasses could be sold profitably because they were not easy to obtain. While Kai was thinking about taking care of his brother, someone suggested that he join their hunt. A fairly large group of Seekers approached him, and they did not look like newbies. Their leader introduced his team, which hunted elite macaques, splitting into 3 squads, and promised a treasure chest as a reward. Of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch, so the guy was wary of this offer. But the leader smiled and said that they needed just one person. If they wanted to attack, they would have attacked immediately, so Kai accepted their offer, and now they were looking out for prey from the mountains. In a small gorge, 4 level 15 gorillas were dozing at once. They were guarding the entrance to the cave where the treasure that the scouts had discovered lay. The difficulty was that the searchers had 3 teams for each gorilla, and one had to be led away from the others. The plan was simple. The guy was supposed to just distract one macaque while the Seekers dealt with the rest, and then return to them for the reward. There was an elite chest in the cave, which was worth more than ordinary monster corpses. The loot looked very tempting. But the intent of the searchers was obvious. They did not expect the guy to return alive after the fight with the macaque, and that they would not have to share the spoils. But now they were in the same boat, so Kai couldn't just up and leave. He agreed to this deal. Hearing this, the captain gave the command to the others and they began hunting. When the commotion arose, the macaques woke up and saw the searchers running into the gorge. Kai had to attack first to lure the monkey right away. One of the menacing macaques rushed to give him a big hug, but the guy slid past. The angry monkey was very upset that the man did not appreciate this gesture of kindness and chased after him. The squad leader was pleased as long as everything went according to his plan. He shouted to everyone that every unit should fight the poppies to the death and not even think about retreating. Meanwhile, the guy got an overly calculating macaque and it became increasingly difficult to dodge. The characteristics of this gorilla were several times superior to others. A simple seeker would have already become a pancake. But Kai is definitely not a simpleton. He turned around and threw 6 daggers at once, which fanned out at the macaque. They all hit their target. If they had been regular pins, the wounds they left would not have stopped the meat tank. But a 200-fold crit is like an entire rocket exploding. It is not surprising that even the elite macaque did not survive such a hit. Kai grinned. Now he was free to go get the reward. The Seekers were still struggling with the monkeys. None of them had any powerful penetrating techniques to end the fight quickly. That's why Kai was able to sneak to the cave entrance, which remained free. Under cover of the noise of battle, shouts, trampling, and the clanging of weapons, he penetrated inside where he immediately saw a luxurious chest. Luck itself was coming his way, just as that girl in the shabby dress had predicted. For this, it was worth taking the risk and fighting a level 15 gorilla. The Seeker grinned and extended his hand to the good. But then he heard a polite cough above him and felt a warm, foul-smelling liquid dripping onto his shoulder. Kai froze in place, wondering if he should pretend to be a monkey after all. They were related in some sense. The mad monkey punched him and almost turned him into jelly. The guy was saved only by his reflexes and high-level agility, but it is very strange that the scouts did not find a level 20 monkey in the cave. The system howled alarmingly, warning of danger due to the difference in levels, while the monkey smiled sweetly at its guests. Moreover, with its huge body, the monster blocked the only exit from this spacious cave. Kai dodged and threw daggers, that was all he could do. But this time, the monkey's thick skin did not let the damage through, and the pins rebounded off it with a loud sound. Even hitting it in the eye did not cause any damage. The game convention distorted reality. The monster's armor values were higher than the hero's attack, so no matter where he hits, the damage will not go through. To crit, you need to at least scratch the target. Kai found himself in the same position as against the wolf leader, and the monkey had already swung. This time he had nowhere to run, and the guy absorbed all the damage and flew into the wall like a fly. He slammed into the rock with a loud thud, causing debris to rain down from above. This time he was really annoyed, but Kai had no intention of dying. If you die on a ghost star, you will be punished, and will have to wait another month to return here again. He would lose a whole month, and he would also lose the argument with Commander Wei, Kai thought, as the monkey held him like a toy in its huge paws. He felt his eyelids grow heavy, and remembered how he had once been carried like this in their arms, and asked to wake up. His brother carried him and begged him not to pass out as long as possible and to stay with him. He couldn't abandon the younger one, even though he himself could barely move. Then hell descended on Earth. Terrible monsters were all around, and cities were ground to dust. The few survivors saved themselves as best they could. 10 years ago, the war came to their home. Kai pulled himself together. He had no right to even think about dying here. The gorilla decided to have breakfast, and Kai wondered if he would become a titan when he was swallowed, like in that TV series about giants. But these were not the right thoughts again. He could not afford to lose here. The gorilla swallowed him whole, which could be called a great success. He still had 2 options left. But just in case, Kai decided to do a third one, without waiting for the outcome. Fortunately, the monkey's armor only worked from the outside. Not the cleanest way to kill a monster. The blood and debris will take a long time to wash off, but the choice is limited. Kai rose to his feet, as with the wolf leader. Without armor, the monsters were vulnerable to his crit, so now the treasure was free. Of course, he had no doubts about justice. All the treasures belong to the hero. He still needs to save the world. There was a loud cry of jubilation from outside. One by one, the Seekers eliminated the 3 monkeys and thought that the guy distracting the quarter was dead. This means that you won't have to share the chest among 4 people, which is very convenient. The naive Seekers had already divided the skin of the unkilled gorilla, but when they entered inside, they discovered an emptiness in place of the reward. The elite treasure chest simply disappeared. One of the searchers reported that he saw out of the corner of his eye how the guy was sneaking into the cave, which really angered the captain, because this should have been reported earlier. But he justified himself by saying that in the heat of battle, it could have just seemed that way to him, because the boy was supposed to die. An indignant hubbub immediately erupted in the cave. The Seekers demanded their payment. Many had not been paid for several months. The captain cut them off with a fierce cry and a stream of abuse. The scoundrel led them all on. To escape possible pursuit, Kai ran for a long time and now finally decided to look at his reward. When he opened it, he saw the contents of various objects. His eyes flashed greedily with credit icons. There was a lot of useful ore in the chest. The value of equipment and minerals is higher than that of monster carcasses, so this time he caught luck by the tail. Among other things, he found gloves with flames and immediately tried them on. The effect was immediate. Kai felt lighter and stronger. This item increased his characteristics. To see what else they were capable of, he decided to attack something. And he made a lightning-fast throw and the daggers whistled through the air. For a few moments the pins were kissed by flame, and he realized that the gloves were giving ignition to the weapon that Kai was using. There are different flames that can be found on the Ghost Star, each dealing different amounts of fire damage. Regular fire did little damage and was useless in combat, but it could be used to cook food. Kai wondered if the portable grill in his hands was worth all the risk and effort. A fierce roar was heard from the forest again. Fortunately for the Seekers, the monsters in this place were not particularly smart and did not try to hide or set up an ambush. 4 level 18 gorillas approached him, confident in their strength. Kai belatedly realized that he might have disturbed the monsters himself when he threw the daggers to test the flames. Recently he barely dealt with 1 elite gorilla, and now there are 4 of them at once. Kai threw daggers. He aimed at the open mouth because that was the only place where the virtual armor didn't cover them. But the cunning gorilla snapped his teeth and repelled this attack. The macaques became even more angry and continued their chase. These monkeys are not as stupid as they seemed at first glance, and the guy had to quickly run away. They ran out into the open space. Now even if the monkey growled and Kai fell into its mouth, he wouldn't have enough daggers to kill everyone. While he was running, he noticed that the flame on the dagger had not gone out and continued to cause damage. Even if it was microscopic, fire magic ignored armor and caused damage. This fire was not capable of causing them serious harm or stopping them, but rather was like a tickle. But even tickling can kill if you increase it 200 times. Boom. A wave of scorching heat engulfed the monkey, and death came instantly. The flame continued to burn and dealt several more critical hits, each time causing a wave of heat to wash over the other monkeys. The guy himself was amazed by such a powerful flame and froze in place. The monkeys grew smarter right before our eyes and looked anxiously at the tongues of fire, but it was too late. The triple explosion was so powerful that it almost burned his eyebrows. Kai quickly jumped away from the monkeys that had turned into walking bombs. When the smoke from the fire cleared in the wind, all 3 monkeys were dead. Now he could think calmly to understand what had caused such a stunning fire effect. Doing some simple multiplication in his mind, he realized why the damage matched his crit. The flames from the gloves quickly spread, which only increased the chance of a critical hit, 1%, a pure statistic, but deadly effective. As long as the target has 0 fire resistance, even normal flames in Kai's hands will deal massive damage. With this, he turned into a fire mage. No one can resist damage of 2,000 units per second. Since he no longer needed to worry about defense and piercing damage, he committed genocide against monsters in the Royal Valley. The entire forest was engulfed in flames, which drove the monkeys away. The monkeys had never seen fire that could harm them. They had never met a man with eyes like a demon. He left no one alive and took all the rewards. 2 days after his arrival in the valley, blooming and green, it turned into ashes. In one night, Kai wiped out the black monkey population and advanced to the 7th level. The attack of 1 hairpin, with all the damage combined, now corresponded to the attack of a level 20 seeker. With 10 expensive chests and 100 monkey carcasses, Kai made a fortune in one night. He did regret a little that he was all alone here and missed his test with Ju and Nuon. The guys are busy in the army, so they are fine. That's what he thought. But when Ju arrived at the Royal Valley, he discovered that someone had already killed all the monsters here. They stayed here for several days, but still didn't meet any monsters. Nuon also missed the effective hunting with her friend. Their captain came up to them and ordered them to stop whining. The reason why they were able to do it easily before was because they were in a training area, but this was a place for high-level beasts. Li Bao himself was already level 38, so from his experience he knew that it was unlikely that the trio would repeat their previous success. He reminded the newcomers that they were here for training and ordered them to continue searching for monkeys. The boys answered in chorus, "Yes." The next day, a group of searchers made camp on the carcasses of the killed monkeys. They wandered for several days, but found only these crumbs. If it weren't for the order to eliminate Zhang Kai, they definitely wouldn't have wasted their energy on such a trifle. But then the voice of the captain of another group was heard from a nearby fire. He said that he had seen one man kill 3 monkeys at once. But what of it? That could only impress newbies, objected the mercenary from the Falcon Squad. To which the witness of the main character's power only snorted contemptuously. The Huang clan mercenary changed the subject and showed a photo of Kai, who they were looking for. "What a coincidence," the captain of the searchers muttered. This was exactly the man they were talking about. The Falcons didn't believe him, because he was talking about a level 5 rookie, so it all sounded like a joke. To this, the captain suggested that they go and experience the pain, that is, the power of the great hero, since they had missed him when they left the valley. This meant that Kai was very close, and the mercenaries' eyes flashed angrily. After so many days of vegetating, they could finally get down to business. Everyone was grinning contentedly. The witnesses of the great hero only looked at them with a condescending glance. Another bunch of villains were in a hurry to become experience points. At the other end of the valley, where the searchers had set up a common camp, quite a few disappointed faces had already gathered. They shared rumors with each other that a recent fire had killed all the black monkeys. They had no idea that the real culprit of this disaster was right next to them. In 3 days, he had finished off all the gorillas and raised the level to 10. But then the hero was called by a bunch of loud thugs, whom he had never seen before. They had been looking for him for a very long time and were now licking their lips like hyenas. The Seekers immediately recognized the members of the Huang clan and already sympathized with the boy who attracted their attention. Kai told them that if he were paid 1 loan for every time he heard about the Huang family, he would become a rich man. But the mercenary promised that this time would be the last, and took out his sword without further ado. Kai immediately understood that they would speak in the language of steel, the fairest of all. He was accused of attacking the heir, but Kai justified himself by saying that it was self-defense, he said. But of course the prosecution didn't care about his pathetic excuses. They demanded God's judgment. Since these people were so eager to part with their experience points, it was the duty of a just hero to help them do so. The daggers whistled. He threw 6 at once. The attack was sharp, so even experienced mercenaries had to strain to dodge. But the scoundrels only laughed when they realized that not a single pin had hit, and the fire that had touched them was too weak. From the outside, it also looked like the guy had no chance of winning this fight against experienced and strong opponents. Kai smiled. He had done this trick many times this week, so he was absolutely confident in it. Then the mercenary experienced an indescribable feeling when 10 points of damage turned into 2,000. Dracarys, Kai whispered as he watched the flames engulf the mercenary. In an instant they lost their leader, and the mercenary's enthusiasm diminished. At the same time, the leader enjoyed the realistic transmission of all the sensations of being burned alive. The other mercenaries looked in horror at the lights in their hearts that the just hero had lit. The light of truth reached both their souls and bodies, warming them with its heat. They were seized by panic. There was no way to hide or escape from this flame. Everyone watched as the hero quickly gained a lot of experience points. Kai chuckled again. He loved the smell of napalm in the morning. God's judgment is the fairest judgment in the world, the guy thought, looking at the villains. This performance caused quite a stir among the Seekers. For one person to eliminate 5 level 20s was a rare occurrence. They immediately began scanning him with their wristwatches. Looking at his abilities, they thought that Kai was a god-level fire mage. The god of fire gained 2 levels at once, which was quite a catch. When the system spirit appeared before him, he asked her why others couldn't detect its characteristics. It's quite simple. The gamer class constantly doubled his points, which led to a huge gap with Seekers of the same level. In its own way, this is quite useful for him, as Kai could become a target for others if they realized his true skills. Later, the hero came to the exchange point, where he found a bored girl at the table. He was the first one to come to hand over the loot all day, so she expected a lot. Kai asked to count the goods. He had very little of any kind. Of course, she didn't change her bored look. It was immediately obvious that she was a newbie. And then her eyes widened sharply when an impressive list of killed monsters was dumped on the table. Then he showed her a list of containers, and the girl thought that no calculator would be enough for this. There was so much of everything that she could hardly make out the face of this crazy guy. The girl froze, not understanding where this unique item came from and why she wanted to sell so many at once. However, she quickly cast aside all doubts and got down to work, presenting all her merits as the best salesperson. He was paid 10,000 ghost coins for each carcass, and 17 times more for the chests. Almost 200,000 phantom coins in one fell swoop. The number made Kai's head spin. Considering the tenfold exchange rate on Earth, this amounted to more than covering his brother's medical expenses. Now he could be sure that he had won the argument with Commander Wei, and would not have to join the army. As Kai walked across the square, a familiar voice called out to him. The fortune-teller girl already knew that he had made good money, and had also killed several bad guys. It's hard to argue with that. The trip to the Royal Valley helped him a lot, so the girl asked for a favor. She pointed her hand at herself and asked to be taken into the team to fight together next time. Goodbye, Kai said, even though he had been ready to listen to her just a second ago. Then the little girl sighed in disappointment. As always, even the military did not appreciate her skills. In a pained voice, she offered her instrument for free. Anyway, this was the last time she would come to the Ghost Star, and Kai felt a pang of conscience. He was surprised to find that he had a conscience and asked the girl why, if she was poor, she no longer wanted to earn money from the Phantom Star. Of course she wanted to. Like everyone else, she just couldn't. What team needs a weakling who can only guess? Once upon a time, she was also led by the road of adventure. But then the army stopped appreciating the class of feng shui experts, and after the 20th level, she changed her specialty. Initially, a feng shui master simply had a better sense, but changing his specialty to a fortune-teller deprived him of his previous advantages. The army rejected them because they lacked fighting skills, and for the same reason no one wanted to take them into the team. Now that Han couldn't hunt, she spent her days telling fortunes to passers-by for small change. But on Earth, work as a garbage collector or a builder awaits her. Kai understood how hard such work was. His brother had ruined his health at the construction site. On Earth, a family was waiting for her, for whom she was the only breadwinner, so the girl could not retreat. For a second, Kai saw his older brother, who was always smiling. His brother was the same, determined to evolve on the Ghost Star and fight monsters. But because he had to take care of the younger ones, he gave up this opportunity and worked until it broke him. Han suggested going to the store and exchanging everything she had there. In any case, she needed to face the truth and accept her fate. But Kai stopped her. After all, he had a conscience. The girl's fate was too similar to his own. Now he was returning home, but he promised that if she was here when he returned, he would take her into the team. Not expecting such luck, the girl blushed and was afraid to say anything. Kai swore that he wouldn't make more money if he lied, and that convinced the cutie, because she knew how much he was obsessed with money. Before he left, the girl grabbed him from behind and squeezed him tightly in a fit of gratitude. He barely got rid of her, and they attracted a lot of attention on the street. Once home, Kai stunned his brother and sister by telling them that from now on they no longer had to go to work. The first thing my sister thought was that he was doing something illegal. Of course, he earned everything from the Phantom Star, and now the elder brother could be cured. The brother smiled and asked him if it was difficult. But compared to the hard work on the construction site, it was nothing, Kai noted modestly. His brother worked hard to raise 2 orphans. Before, he was the only one who worked hard, but now Kai could take care of everything so that they could live well. They solemnly clinked glasses of juice, celebrating this success. Later, Wei contacted him and asked if he had a minute since he had won their bet. He sent someone for Kai so they could meet and asked him to be ready. Outside the safe zone, the cities lay in ruins. After so many years, nothing remains of the city where Kai spent his childhood. He couldn't even imagine for what purpose the commander might need him. But as soon as he rose to his observation position, a deafening roar was heard, from which the walls shook. A monstrous lion, up to 10 stories tall at the withers, walked across the rubble of buildings. He was pursued by experienced veteran hunters, who attacked the lion from above, where he was defenseless. Kai was amazed. Fights with divine beasts were a special phenomenon. On the Ghost Star, seekers pass stages every 20 levels, become stronger, but can only use there. But for seekers who have passed the 80-level barrier, all their powers can now be used on the ground to fight monsters. The divine beast saw the attack and opened its mouth to gather energy for an explosion. The 3 veterans raised a golden shield to repel the plasma stream. Veterans could use their power on the ground to destroy monsters. The emergence of this supernatural force changed the military history of mankind. People endowed with this power have become the most effective means of combating the alien threat. The spectacle was just what it should be. The strength of the veterans was impressive. However, Wei watched everything with restraint. The veterans only dealt with an ordinary divine beast. But to kill a truly powerful monster, they had already sacrificed 2 transcendents, Wei told the boy. The situation in which people find themselves is difficult. One must always be prepared for threats, even if one lives in a safe zone. Old Man Wei promised not to bother Kai anymore since he had won their bet, and also to take care of the Huang family so that he would not be bothered. Anyone would have been surprised by such special treatment, but the fact was that Wei trusted his instinct for cheaters. In the future, Kai could become a strong man, so strong that they might need his help. Of course, Wei understood that Kai wanted to protect his family, and serving in the army meant taking risks on the battlefield. But every person shares responsibility for the fate of their country, and someone in this world must fight against the monsters. Wei knew that one day he too would meet his death on the battlefield, but he was ready to accept it with all his heart, because he was fighting for his homeland. He promised Kai not to interfere with his choices, but one day if the country is in danger, he must do everything to protect it. After a few days of rest, Kai returned to the Ghost Star. He thought about what Commander Wei had told him. In the future, he would truly become stronger, and the city needed him. But first, he needed to take care of himself. After the destruction of the monkeys, they no longer posed a threat to him, and therefore he needed to take a step forward. He looked at the next target, a ghost Banshee, an elite monster with high attack. The peculiarity of this monster was that it could only be attacked from 10 meters. But from this distance, the Seeker himself was vulnerable, so he could definitely use a teammate. At this time, Han was waiting for Kai without moving from her place, with a sign in her hands. "Don't wake me. I'm waiting for the captain." Kai became worried. She hadn't been waiting for him in this place all week so as not to miss him. When she recognized him, she was very happy, because she believed that Kai would return. In a conspiratorial tone, Han told him that she had found a teammate who would be of use to him through fortune-telling. This is good news for Kai. The main thing is that it was not a drunk master, he noticed. His name was Yuan Yu, and he had the class of a drunken master. He introduced himself modestly as a plump man. Kai disappeared in a second. Instead of 1 problematic team member, he got 2. Even Han was taken aback by such a quick reaction and didn't know what to say. She stood up for the guy, saying that he was very hard-working and obedient and generally a sweetheart. Kai stopped, and she added that Yuan would do any job and was ready to share the reward. At the word reward, Kai's internal benefit risk counter squeaked shrilly. Kai immediately accepted the guy and shook his hand. A cheap slave on the team never hurt, he thought. And then he solemnly announced their target, the menacing ghosts of the Banshee. Since they were now like a seed, it was time to go. The guys couldn't believe that such a shameless and selfish person could exist, but there wasn't much choice. The Banshee lived in a wooden house in the middle of the King's Valley. She was level 20 and looked like a freelancer on the morning of a deadline. Looking at the ghost, Kai thought that she could definitely use a cup of coffee. He warned his comrades that they had to remain quiet, because the ghost could kill them as soon as it discovered them. But at the same time, damage can be inflicted from 10 meters, so the most difficult task is to get closer to him. Kai heard heavy snoring and told Han not to breathe so loudly. The girl was surprised and wanted to say that it wasn't her, but Kai again told her to be quiet. Then they turned to the third member of their small team. Fat Yuan was snoring like an armored train throughout the entire forest, and had already drunk his fill of tea, celebrating joining the team. Of course, the freelancer's ghost couldn't help but hear such a noise and began to grit his teeth disgustingly. She rushed straight at them, covering the distance to the bushes in one fell swoop. The ghost opened its ugly mouth and howled piercingly. Kai and Han were horrified. She had promised him that the fat man would be useful to them in battle, but the girl replied that she had simply embellished it a little. Banshee used her heartbreaking scream ability. A wave of sound pressed Kai and Han. The girl had no fighting skills at all, but the chubby one was fast asleep. Kai felt someone else's skill on himself for the first time. The monster used fear on him. An overwhelming horror took over his entire body, and did not allow him to move a finger when the ghost approached. Han completely despaired, and waited for death. The freelancer's ghost reached out its greedy hands towards him as Yuan exclaimed in amazement, "What a beauty." "Such a cutie really came to him," the fat man shouted, and energetically began to court the lady. He flew past the team like a bullet, and asked the girl to dance. Like all men under the influence of tea, Yuan did not accept refusals. He rarely came across such cuties, so he held the ghost tightly in his hands. His hand gently ran over the ghost's rough cheekbone, and Banshee herself was overcome with fear without any training. The moment the fat man took the Banshee upon himself, the abnormal numbness left Kai, and he was able to move. The Banshee needed time to recharge her scream, so they had to deal with her before that happened. Kai fanned out his fiery pins. Fortunately, the distance to the target was suitable. All the daggers hit their target while Yuan completely disarmed her with his charm. He was seriously planning to give the lady his first kiss, despite the fact that she clearly hadn't brushed her teeth for 100 years. But this was not destined to happen. As soon as the fuse was lit, the fire crit bomb detonated. The explosion even affected Yuan, but he was more upset that he was left without a girlfriend. However, it was a clear success. The level 20 monster died. True, now another misfortune has happened. Yuan has lost all self-control. He screamed and cried because the love of his life was killed before his eyes. Han reassured Kai that this was his usual behavior, and it was all because of the drunken masterclass, which was triggered even by tea. Pleased, the girl ran to the freelancer's hut for the chest and the monster card. Despite his behavior, Yuan turned out to be a very useful comrade, and he dealt with the monster single-handedly. What irritated the Seekers most about drunken masters was that they would instantly let go of the leash, but thanks to this, Yuan was not subject to fear. Han brought the chest and shuddered when she saw Kai's face. It was the face of a man who realized that he had been given an extremely useful slave. Without thinking twice, they headed to the next sleep-deprived worker. The team let Yuan off the leash like a tame dog, and the guy's sadness had long since passed. After all, he had come across another beauty, so he smiled sweetly and rushed to her feet. The Banshee let out a heart-rending scream. She had no intention of meeting the suspicious man. But such obstinacy only fueled Yuan's interest. He loved girls with character. Out of great love, he grabbed the Striga so tightly that she could not move. Now all that was left was a small matter. Even a child could hit a stationary target from a distance of less than 10 meters. The daggers struck again at the most crucial moment for Yuan, and there was a dragon of such force that Yuan was thrown away. The man, separated from his love, suffered again. He flew away and showered them with curses for ruining a good acquaintance. Having landed with a loud thud on his head, Yuan calmed down a little. Kai decided to try this trick again while Yuan was still recovering from the effects of the tea. For the next 3 hours, the team repeated the algorithm of a successful hunt. Greedy people took advantage of the romantic's weakness for beauty and profited from him while he suffered. And then they burned his chosen ones again right before his eyes. In one day, they sent 35 ghosts to a better world. Kai raised 2 levels at once and became 14th. And all for the price of one broken heart. Han was right. Yuan really was useful to them. Besides the usual rewards, Kai received skill cards. The first one was a prayer and called for rain. It is very useful if the monsters are in the lowlands. They can simply be drowned. This skill was given to Han by Kai. She was level 29 and her spiritual power exceeded his. The girl immediately shed a tear, as if she were a house elf who had received a sock. The silly girl began to beat her head on the ground and swore to serve the captain forever. Now Han was no longer a scumbag, because she also had a skill. Even the bump on her head did not diminish her delight. The second card activated a hidden class skill, but it can only be used once before it disappears. Kai used the card and a system spirit appeared, telling him that he had gained the casino robbery skill. The effect was quite simple. It stole a few characteristic points for half an hour and added them to the player. But it was so stupid because it can only be used once and the effect is limited, so Kai was tearing his hair out. Moreover, the number of points stolen was minimal, which greatly discouraged him. Meanwhile, the hero lover woke up with pain in his chest and did not really understand what was happening. Han helpfully reminded him that he had already become a widower 35 times. All the things he had done flashed through the guy's mind and he felt a rainbow. The guy began to apologize for interfering and suggested leaving the team. But this was out of the question. Yuan had proven himself to be a great hero and Kai rewarded him with clothes. The drunken master became the core of the team. Without him, they would not have been able to cope with the Banshee. Yuan was so moved by the fact that he was not being kicked out of the team that he even refused the reward. But Kai insisted. He had promised to treat his comrades well, and Han was also entitled to new clothes. Hearing these words, the girl's heart skipped a beat. In her eyes, Kai turned into a handsome prince, just someone who watched too much shoujo manga. Now Kai has 2 happy hamster slaves. Without saying a word, the lemmings began to praise their captain, which made him embarrassed. After a successful hunt, Kai arrived at the exchange shop where they were already waiting for him. He earned almost 1,000,000 local credits. At a rate of 1 to 10, this completely covered his family's expenses. So he could spend a little money on equipment. The clothes added to agility and gave visibility at night for 3 minutes. And he also got armor. Altogether, the characteristics became greater, so Kai became more confident in himself. Now he could deal with even a level 20 seeker without any problems. When he left the store, he saw Yuan rushing towards him with some kind of log. In his other hand, he held a dagger and ran comically on short legs. But when he threw a dagger at Kai, he was no longer laughing. For a second, Kai thought that Yuan simply wanted revenge for 36 dead wives. But before the shiv could turn him into a pirate captain, Yuan stopped it. He threw the log up and commanded the knife to stand still. The dagger quickly flew back at almost the same speed. During the battle, Kai was putting himself in danger, so Yuan decided to take care of him and handed him a dagger. Thanks to the power of the magnet, he could return the dagger back, considering the fighting style. This was super useful for Kai, like endless projectiles. Moreover, the return movement could also cause damage to the enemy, which turned Kai into a killing machine, so he enthusiastically patted Yuan on the shoulder. He was ready to swear how impressed he was with the fat man's craftsmanship skills. But then a bolt of lightning struck out of the blue and Kai shuddered with a bad feeling. Kai turned around with alarm to look at the culprit of the mess. Under the drizzling raindrops, a joyful Han ran towards them. She had learned the rain-calling skill, but decided that it was useless. Although the effect was impressive, a real downpour began and the searchers ran for shelter. This amount of water at once was already a force, and if the skill was improved, it could be used against enemies, Kai said. Water softens the ground, slows down the target's movement, makes everything slippery, and reduces the enemy's vision. Han, hearing these words, decided that she could be proud of herself and promised to train even more. Kai exposed his face to the cold streams of rain, but his soul was light. Their small team had become stronger. The searchers running nearby cursed the unexpectedly bad weather. Their clothes had become wet and could be ruined. Kai heard that their equipment belonged to the Huang clan, so he decided to check it out. The clan guild was planning to send 200,000 seekers to raid the boss, which would increase the holdings on the Ghost Star. Everyone is responsible for the ups and downs of this world, the seekers told him. They hurried away so as not to be late. If the Huang clan was hunting the monster, the heir would be there too, Kai thought. The divine beast was raging across the entire earth. Not every country was able to withstand it, and it required enormous resources. But the resources on the Ghost Star were guarded by other monsters, so they had to be killed first. The monsters on the Ghost Star had their own rank scale from highest to lowest. To confront the highest rank, hundreds of thousands of trained seekers are needed. Such a large-scale contribution could bring the Huang clan to the top of the Phantom Star. For a second, Kai thought that the Huang clan would now bring goodness and hope to the world. He remembered Commander Wei's words that everyone had a responsibility, and perhaps the Huang clan had decided to take a risk for everyone. The raid was planned on an island of permafrost, on a Ghost Star. The trio from the young team also arrived at a place where there was only snow and rocks. Shivering from the cold, they arrived on the island with the telling name without warm clothes. When you hear a cry from the mountain, you can't just hang around here. Kai replied that they were new and asked to explain what was going on. The guy who was left on guard immediately started to put on airs and said that there was a monster's lair under the island. They are walking on thin ice, said the veteran, hearing a quiet crack. And at that very moment, a fish-headed monster burst out from under the thin edge. The level 22nd bipedal Fishman read Kai while she saved her comrades. This is a dangerous monster. To deal with it, you needed a well-trained team of at least level 20. The guards chuckled. The Fishman specialized in melee attacks and was not easy to kill. Kai stood still until the very end, when the monster struck with a pitchfork, but his image suddenly blurred. Thanks to this, using his agility, Kai appeared behind the monster. In one fell swoop, he stuck his pins into his face like a hedgehog. There was an explosion, and the smell of delicious fried fish filled the air. The simpletons who were left on guard widened their eyes, asking if this was even possible. Before their eyes, a newbie who had not even reached level 15 beat the monster single-handedly. Kai clenched his fists in triumph, as he expected. Even in this zone, the monsters were no threat to his class. His strength reached 76 units, which in itself is not small. A normal crit multiplied this damage by 200, but that was only a fraction of its power. Kai returned the daggers using the technique Yuan showed him. The main thing is that all his characteristics corresponded to the 20th level. Han took the fried fish card and they could move on. In the meantime, Kai asked the villains if they knew where the clan's heir was. They immediately became as soft as silk, and after just one demonstration understood who was boss here, so they promised to show Kai the way. But Kai went to this meeting alone. He didn't want to drag his team into it. Kai heard footsteps and recognized the voice of the blonde man who called out to him. He came to him with his friends and with a full set of armor. Kai suggested that they forget about past grievances. Since the Huang clan was helping the country, he also wanted to contribute. But instead of an answer, he noticed a glint of steel flying towards him. Kai barely dodged the heavy chopping blow. The blonde attacked without any warning. The vile scoundrel did not know what conscience was, although Kai just wanted to talk. To which Huang Wei responded with malice in his voice that the best conversation was with swords. After being kept in rehabilitation for a whole month, Huang Wei was extremely angry. He had not forgotten the past humiliation at all, and wanted to take revenge, despite the fact that Kai was protected by the army. That's why the heir took the initiative and organized a whole raid on the boss, just to eliminate Kai at that time. Kai was taken aback by how ridiculous this was. But what else could you expect from scoundrels with a megalomania complex? Now he realized his mistake when he came to the negotiations. From the very beginning, they didn't have a chance. The heir swung his sword. He decided that if he defeated the boss, he would then be forgiven for killing Kai. Kai dodged again. He realized that a beast always remains a beast, and in vain he thought well of their family. If so, then there remained a divine trial by combat, the fairest trial in the world. Kai said to attack all at once, because last time he had already dealt with the clan's mercenaries. To which the blonde's minions laughed. Their master had the 10th level and equipment above the highest rank. But then it dawned on them how wrong they were, because Kai was already on his 14th. The daggers struck Huang Wei and caused an explosion despite the armor. The fire was causing him enormous damage and his health was rapidly depleting. The villain felt the full power of the Matrix, which transmitted the full spectrum of sensations from burning alive. Kai told his minions to get out if they didn't want to suffer the same fate. But by some miracle, and thanks to his armor, the blonde was able to retain 1% of his health and not die. He ordered to attack. The henchman responded with a threatening look and moved towards Kai. Since they too had decided to die a heroic death, Kai did not object. He just needed test subjects to apply his new technique. The daggers whistled past their target, but the heir's guards were experienced. Not a single dagger hit the target. They decided that Kai was an ordinary weakling. Each of them was level 35. The first to attack him was a swordsman with a long broadsword, surrounded by a blue aura of power. Kai laughed like those movie villains. He always dreamed of doing that before a fight. "The nail that sticks out will be hammered in first," he said, and the dagger struck the fighter in the back on a return movement. The critical hit worked like clockwork, and the clan heir's bodyguard flared up like a torch. The overconfident simpletons froze in place, discovering that the daggers could return instead of simply moving. Left without a commander, they unexpectedly became confused and did not know what to do. Their leader didn't last a second against the daring newcomer and became coals. However, Kai was not finished yet. He moved so quickly that he managed to get behind the enemy lines. Now the daggers he returned were pierced from the front, and as he moved, he constantly changed the direction from which the returned dagger could come. It was a stunning and deadly technique, throwing and returning, moving and dealing critical damage on impact. The enemies didn't stand a chance. The villains' heads were spinning, Before this, they always relied on the difference in levels and attribute points. The heir could not stand it and shouted to his men that the enemy was only good at long-range attacks. Realizing his weakness, they decided to quickly approach him as a crowd. The heir already believed in himself, and in the fact that he had figured out Kai's vulnerability. But the answer was a bright, fiery flower that opened before him. His entire team of bodyguards fell, and the scoundrel felt for the first time the sticky fear and wet pants. All his enemies were just trash, no skills or tricks. The unfortunate man was still clinging to the levels and screaming in horror. He did not understand how this had happened. But from the very beginning, they offered him to come to an agreement and resolve everything peacefully. Of course, life teaches such fools nothing. Blood for blood, he's already done it once, Kai said and took out his spear. He smiled sweetly, imagining where he would stick it this time. The heir's eyes widened and a desperate cry echoed through the forest. For eliminating several level 30 seekers, Kai received 3 promotions at once. The system was extremely generous with rewards. But retribution came quickly. For the murder of 10 seekers, he was awarded the status of Bloodthirsty killer. Now all players knew his location, and for his elimination they were given triple experience. To remove this status, it was necessary to use 10 drops of repentance. Now all the seekers were his enemies and could kill him at any moment. Moreover, the effect of his gamer class was triggered, which multiplied the negative effects too, which increased the atonement fee. And if he dies on a ghost star, the penalty for the rollback of characteristics will actually reset him to the first level. Now Kai could not appear in public places until he found tears of repentance. The Huang clan garrison set up camp on a permafrost island in the safe zone. The guards at the clan leader's tent cowered from the loud screams inside. The heir was killed right before the raid. No wonder the clan leader was furious, because they were fighting for the future of the ghost star. His eldest son was holding a council with him in the tent. They needed to react somehow. The head of the clan came to the same conclusion that the country would forgive the heroes who defeated the boss for persecuting one newcomer. Kai returned to his team. There was no time to explain anything to them. He told it like it was, that he had taken revenge on the Huang clan. But now they needed to escape. But then they heard sounds that could not be confused with anything else. A deafening roar of hundreds of people and monsters, and the clanging of weapons. There was a battle going on nearby, which meant the Huang clan had begun their raid. Then they heard another rumble, like ice breaking. Right in front of them, the entire smooth surface began to part. Fishman emerged from the cracks, muscular and angry. And then the king of all the fishmen appeared. He was too fat to walk, so he moved around on his self-propelled throne. The system reported that he was the master of the ice fish, but his level was unknown. Even hiding behind the rock, Kai's team felt his overwhelming presence. The clan leader Huang rode out ahead of the human army and ordered everyone to get ready. He addressed the army of seekers with an appeal, as usual promising fabulous rewards to everyone, of course, to those who survive. For the future of the country and all that, they must give up their virtual lives. The leader shouted loudly that no one should even think about retreating. The battle began, and Kai's companions became worried about whether it was worth risking participation in such a melee involving thousands of people. Luckily for them, the captain decided that they would not go for now. As long as the battle continued, the Huang clan would not be able to reach him, so they could simply enjoy the rare sight. As always, a crowd of villains rushed into a disorderly attack, shelling from distant approaches, cover, maneuvers. This is pseudoscience in history. Real men go on the attack against giants face to face, so that they can immediately go to Valhalla. The fish army didn't act in the best way, but even a rank-and-file fighter was level 25 and strong. The Seekers shuddered at the sight of such power. It was obvious that the losses would be considerable, but they hoped that the fish were stupid. But hopes didn't help. The fish grabbed the man and threw him into its mouth. Then the Seekers were seized with horror. The monsters bit them, tormented them, and ate them alive. Such an experience, albeit virtual, left a deep mark on their psyche. Han shuddered. Even a common fish soldier could kill a Seeker in one fell swoop. Moreover, the army of fish was constantly reviving, and this could only be stopped by defeating the boss. The battle between people and fish is not even the main event of this battle. They are just extras. The main battle will take place between the chosen Seekers and the bosses. The first 8 brave souls entered the fat fish zone. Their actions looked much more coordinated. They covered each other and marched in battle formations. The main blow was delivered head-on, deciding to unleash all their fighting power on the king of fish at once. From the glow of their blows, a second sun blossomed, and for several seconds nothing was visible. Such was the strength of the veterans, capable of defeating even divine beasts. However, Kai could clearly see with his ghostly gaze that the boss didn't even move. The fat armor on the kingfish was not damaged, meaning he did not suffer any damage. The statistics were again consumed with the picture. Anyone would be surprised that skin and fat could work as armor, so the players were stunned. Then the boss counterattacked, and the confused seekers didn't have time to retreat. The giant howled contentedly. He laid out all the veterans without getting up from his chair. This was the main trump card of the army of seekers, without which the entire army is simply a useless crowd of extras. Kai gritted his teeth. He had no idea that the power of the King of Fish was so great. It was one thing to hear, another to see with your own eyes. But another veteran did not lose heart and rushed into the attack again. Even though his 8 comrades had fallen, he walked alone like a man. His spear clanged against the king's trident and the warrior held off the attack. The guy got really angry after losing all his unlucky comrades. His name was Fan, the strongest seeker of the Schwan Guild with the spearman class. He walked forward confidently, challenging everyone with his appearance alone. Thanks to a special skill that took on a quarter of the characteristics of fallen comrades, their death was not in vain. Moreover, it was necessary. The 8 friends doubled Fan's strength, so the sharp throw was successful, and a wound opened on the boss's body. The giant's defense has been breached, and now the Seekers have a ghost of a chance to win. The Schwan Guild sacrificed its elite squad to play the Fan card, and Chief Huang was encouraged. Fan was bursting with strength, as if he had eaten too many dragon pearls. His power was equal to several dozen veterans, and he rushed into the attack again. A powerful blow cut the carcass from shoulder to waist in heroic style. The head of the clan, seeing this, was already anticipating an easy victory. Meanwhile, while Kai's attention was occupied by the battle, he did not notice how a long shadow was reaching out to him from behind. An elite fishman of level 32 quietly crept up. The chief's eldest son noticed on the scanner that even more powerful enemies were arriving. The clan leader looked scared. He had never led such operations before. An entire army of fishmen was approaching them, all of them level 30 or higher, and they had to react to this. At the same time, Fan was tied up in a fight with the boss and needed reinforcements himself. The structure of the fish army became known. The main forces of the Seekers fought with ordinary gobies, and above there were crucian carp, pike, sharks, and at the top there was a boss. To respond to these threats, the clan leader distributed forces across all levels, but now there was a risk that their rear would be broken through and the entire front would collapse. Despite the stupidity of ordinary fish, they demonstrated miracles of management. The risk of the entire army of Seekers falling hung over them like a black bird. Fan needed another half-hour to plug the boss with a spear, while the fish reinforcements would reach them in 10 minutes. The fiery pins pierced the fish, turning it into a hedgehog. Kai cooked the fish thoroughly and instantly killed the elite warrior. However, there were still too many monsters and Han and Yuan wanted to leave. Kai looked back at the battlefield. The balance of power could tip against the Seekers. They still wouldn't be able to leave the island if the fish won. It's nice to see the Huang clan fall, but the people who fought for that clan are not guilty of the sins of their leaders. Kai remembered the words of Commander Wei, great power, great responsibility, and so on, and decided to attract all the fish from the ambush squad to himself. They couldn't retreat. Fighting monsters was the job of the Seekers, Kai told his comrades. The fight was still not in favor of the people. The mutant fish, larger and stronger, fought better in chaotic duels. In such conditions, people quickly lost the will to fight and thought about fleeing. It wasn't just the rejection of virtual death, which was unpleasant in itself. Many Seekers couldn't afford to sit at home for a month. So the captain stepped forward and told all the soldiers nearby that they would not run away. He convinced them to fight, because 10 minutes had passed and no enemy reinforcements had arrived. Turning around, they really saw only a bare wasteland. Many were surprised, because the Huang clan did not leave any reserves to withstand such an attack. The captain stated that this was evidence that a strong group was hiding in the rear. Kai ran, many fish chased him, and in this way he led them further away from the positions of the Seekers. Having run a sufficient distance, when the order of fish stretched out, Kai stopped abruptly. Neither strength nor height helped the elite fish. They were destined to be grilled. In this way he had already smoked 20 herrings, but they continued to pursue him, which was tiresome. Han, meanwhile, played the role of an excellent bait, quickly running away from the fish and begging to be saved. Yuan asked for the same thing. He did not risk drinking the invigorating tea. The monsters were too strong to forget about fear. Together they brought a pack of monsters to Kai, which he did not have to run after, and he told his comrades to hide. Han looked at his back with concern, not knowing if the captain could handle it. Kai fearlessly jumped straight into the thick of the enemies. He was tired of killing them one by one. The more targets, the more crits, and the stronger the synergy of fire explosions. The flames engulfed the entire plain. Kai's true power struck fear into not only his enemies, but also his friends as they watched this genocide. The chain explosion was so powerful that its glow was seen from their positions by the searchers. At the command headquarters, they discovered that the rear was clear and thought that they had received reinforcements from the army. But the clan leader doubted it. The army could not arrive so soon. However, now that the rear was covered, All forces could be thrown into helping Fan, who was fighting the monster. Half an hour later, the hero was still jabbing a spear at a monster that would have been better dealt with by a 150 caliber barrel artillery. The fish toad was angry and frowning. He had lost more than a third of his health and fat reserves. That's why the monster suddenly accelerated, so that his corpulent body became blurred to the eye. The second stage of the boss began, as usual, when he lost some of his health. At this stage, Fan could only go into deep defense, under a hail of invisible and deadly blows from the fat man. Basically, the monster was just hitting him with a stick from above. The key to victory lay in whether Fan could stand, but his armor cracked and his spear broke. His health dropped to 5%, and when everyone thought he was going to die, Fan activated his combat armor skill. He had transformed, and now his armor blocked all damage dealt by the trident's light strikes. Moreover, they ricocheted back into the fat fish. This skill simply gave cheat armor that increased defense and dealt damage. Fan's skill reflected half of the damage to the enemy. Considering that the boss had entered the second stage, his strength had increased. It was definitely a bid for victory. The boss's health quickly dropped to 1/3, and he suffered from his own high-speed attacks. The leader again could barely contain his anticipation of an easy victory over the enemy. But at that very moment, the monster struck Fan with a long tentacle, who simply relied on the armor and stood in place. The armor instantly crumbled. The blow left a deep wound in Fan's stomach, and he was barely alive. It turned out that this boss also had skills. He could break armor with a blow from a soft tentacle. That's the logic. The clan leader instantly became despondent. It was no wonder that everything turned out like this on their first raid, without detailed reconnaissance. Their main trump card had just suffered a crushing defeat, depriving the army of half its forces and leaving no one left to take the boss's place. Kai also watched this sad picture without Fan. Hopes melted away like smoke. He saw how selflessly and to the end the Seekers fought. He saw behind this not just a brawl, but a goal: the survival of humanity. The captain of the Jew and Nuon squad already regretted bringing the newcomers to this place. His shield cracked, and his strength was rapidly running out. He wanted to show his students that he was stronger than Kai, with whom they began their journey, but he realized that he turned out to be a terrible captain. Both of his subordinates had already lost their strength to fight. Jew was wounded, and Nuon was exhausted. The girl looked around desperately for support and begged to save them. But the endless horde of mobs tied everyone up in battle, and the catastrophe was approaching them like a snowball. It could not be stopped without the death of the boss. The squad captain's shield broke, and the last straw for salvation disappeared. And when he was already praying to all the gods, the monster's head flew apart like a ripe watermelon after a magnum shot. Zhang Kai walked across the battlefield like a killing machine, his Wolverine daggers cutting down all enemies like grass. He didn't stop to greet his friends and went straight to the boss. Ju couldn't believe his ears. His childhood friend, a newbie on the Ghost Star like himself, declared that he was going to the boss. But there was something else they sensed as Kai rushed past. The path to the boss lay across the battlefield. Han watched his movement from the mountain and was horrified to imagine what Kai himself was seeing now. Absolutely everyone on this battlefield was his enemy and was highlighted by the system. His status as a bloodthirsty killer hung over him like a red banner. Despite the battle, many players wondered whether they could get some useful and free experience for eliminating the new enemy. Kai looked like an easier target than a fish, and the Seekers, without saying a word, rushed at him. But Kai didn't play the self-sacrificing and all-forgiving holy hero. His fire didn't discriminate. A fiery explosion thundered in the middle of the human ranks, and Han lost sight of her captain, thinking that he had died. But after the elite fish, the Seekers were small fry for the guy. Something like that couldn't stop him. His friends were also amazed at his irresistible strength as they watched him break through. Instructor Ju Yinuan was amazed. It was the first time he had seen this type of fighting. At the headquarters of the desperate head of the clan, they noticed the approach of Kai, who had killed the youngest heir. The chief was surprised that such a newcomer had his eye on the boss, but it was even for the best. They wouldn't have to deal with the guy. However, Kai's actions made them anxious. The guy was committing suicide too confidently. The guy had no doubts about his decision to come here, despite all the risks. Commander Wei's voice still rang in his head. If the country was in danger, he had to stand up for it. His homeland needed resources to defend itself. So Kai made that promise and now activated his one-time skill. The spirit of the system informed him that he would steal 0.1% of the characteristics of everyone who looked at him for half an hour. At first, he thought this skill was useless when he first got it. But now that he was on the battlefield where there were thousands of soldiers, and everyone saw his status as a killer, the skill was revealed in full force. Even if it was only 0.1%, the mathematics of large numbers worked further, and the hero was overwhelmed with strength. Kai ran towards the boss, and his movements were clearly visible on the radars. His stats instantly jumped to divine levels. The clan leader was furious. It was one thing to lose a battle to monsters, another thing to the clan's enemy. The hero ran quickly towards the goal, passing zone after zone. Until he entered the area of shark monsters, level 51, they immediately stretched out their greedy paws towards him. The leader watched the result with concern. The sharks had a biting ability that even experienced level 60 seekers were wary of. Kai delivered a normal punch, which was more than enough to disturb the fish squash. After such a display of pure strength, it became obvious that Kai could defeat the boss. Meanwhile, the hero penetrated into the zone of the fish generals who looked askance at the small bug. The Fishman commander was level 71 and had buoys that it was better not to swim beyond. The monster let out a loud cry to stop the impudent intruder. Kai covered his ears. Despite all his characteristics, he still had vulnerabilities. To fight against the commander, you needed skills, equipment, support. You can't live on characteristics alone. Kai lay on the ground with his ears covered when the toothy sea fairy swung at him. But then a lover of all sorts of bulges, who had already drunk tea, entered the picture. Seeing such a volume in front of him, Yuan could not resist and flew like a bullet towards the monster. Despite the difference in levels, his attack went through and caused the giant to stagger. This time, given the size of his dance partner, his courtship was even more aggressive. He landed comically on his fish-headed goddess's face and promised that no one would take her away. Yuan sealed his promise with a strong kiss, but the toad did not become a princess. The monster, of course, did not appreciate such communication and expressed a decisive refusal. But this only made the dreamer more excited. He liked girls with character. The hero was still dizzy. Yuan came even though he was ordered to sit in cover, but this saved Kai. Of course, his comrades couldn't abandon him. Han followed him all this time and called for rain. Han hoped to buy some time for the captain to leave. Despite all Yuan's zeal, he won't last long. When the thunder broke out, everyone realized that Han had called for rain, but they considered this action meaningless. Fish cannot die from water. The girl smiled. These amateurs did not study physics in school and forgot what happens to water in strong winds and cold air temperatures. They only realized it when the first ice floes began to ring loudly against the metal of their armor. The city did not distinguish between its own or others. God would sort out who was who and pound it over a huge area. Han was clearly proud of herself. Before she couldn't attack at all, and now 2 armies were taking damage at once. This allowed her captain to break through people and monsters unhindered. While everyone was distracted, Kai could take care of the boss personally. The ice from the sky could not kill the monsters, but it greatly disturbed them. Han wished him luck and reminded him that they were a team and no one should fight alone. Some savvy prospectors have used weather conditions to defeat the fish generals. Kai thanked his friends. Their help came in very handy, because he also put on a fire show. Given the guy's stats, it's like pressing the win button. Looking at this, the clan leader was amazed. The Fishman general fell as easily as ordinary mobs. There were no more obstacles on the hero's path. Having received so many characteristics, he became very strong. "More cheats for the god of cheats," Kai exclaimed. He ran so fast that he changed his hairstyle. He stopped only when he reached the boss. From afar, he seemed scary and huge. But up close, you could see how disgusting and ugly he was. Han shouted out words of encouragement. The girl cheered for the captain with all her might. He rushed forward again. Every time he moved normally, the air felt like a concrete wall. The instructor saw the boss preparing to deal a critical hit and screamed. But the hero moved so fast that the monster simply missed him. In pure speed, Kai surpassed the boss, meaning he was invulnerable to these attacks. In the best martial arts tradition, he landed on the enemy's weapon. The monster tried to hit him with its hidden tentacle, but the guy dodged it again. To clear his way, he threw daggers at the chute. The fiery explosion threw the tentacle back and the fat boss was left without cover. He was hit so hard that his health dropped to 1/4. Kai stood in front of the monster. They should have looked at each other menacingly, but because of the huge belly, he saw only its lower part. Seeing the boss lift his seat off the chair, the guy realized that the monster recognized his power. The boss let out a thunderous roar to suppress the opponent who was jumping like a flea. The second time, the guy didn't let himself be caught in the range of the scream, although in theory, sound waves spread in all directions. After the scream, the fat man, despite his size, attacked sharply with his fork. However, from the powerful counterattack, even the gigantic column he was waving was shattered into pieces. Kai stood unharmed, his weapon having stood the test of battle. The villains on the battlefield naturally wondered who was the real boss. The guy decided to throw away these games and finish off the monster. The first thing the monster had to do was to bring it down to earth, and it attacked his legs. The wounded boss fell to his knees, no longer able to support his weight and losing another 1/10 of his health. And the hero continued the attack, the second knee looking just as defenseless. A bright explosion knocked the healthy bulk over again, and he fell forward. The monster howled indignantly. No wonder its carcass was kicked without any respect, leaving 5% of its life. A new series of explosions ignited on the fish's arms and legs, and its corpulent bodies shook. The defeated enemy fell as if mown down at the hero's feet. Kai was so fast that he managed to go to a stylist to look cool. All that was left of the huge carcass was a helpless stump, no arms or legs. Even the growth on the back was drooping, 0.1% of life. The clan leader's jaw dropped in amazement, but promised to return. Meanwhile, the army soldiers were watching the battle. They arrived to help, but even without them, everything had already been resolved. Their names were Shen and Lu, and they were Commander Wei's deputies. And now they understood why their commander had placed such high hopes on Kai. The head of the clan, seeing that the boss still had a grain of health, ordered everyone not to let Kai finish him off. A reliable plan had matured in his head. Having abandoned the battle with the fish, the fighters were to allow the clan leader to kill the boss. He promised 50 million credits to whoever killed Kai, but if the boss was killed, no one would get a penny. This amount was staggering for the Seekers, so they too froze with their mouths open. Everyone had their own needs. Some needed treatment for their children. Others needed a game console. The Seekers quickly weighed everything and rushed towards the player killer. They ran a race, ignoring the fact that the fish were chasing them, but the battlefield descended into chaos. Kai chuckled. The Huang clan couldn't handle the boss, and now they were hoping to defeat him with a bunch of weaklings. The guy helped Fan up. The best warrior of the guild was still alive. Fan didn't understand why the killer would help him when the prey was right in front of him. But Kai is not just a hero. He is a just hero, because he remembered that Fan was the first to enter the fight with the boss. If Fan destroys the boss, the battle will end, as will the suffering of the Seekers, and he will also receive a reward. Kai led him to the carcass and offered to deal with it. Since Fan was a member of the clan, he was the one who had to deal the final blow. Fan was amazed. They were actually enemies, but he was receiving such a generous gift. Looking down, the fair hero urged Fan to hurry. Soon the Seekers would reach him. There was no reason to refuse, so Fan immediately accepted the offer. He plunged a spear fragment into the ugly fish and took the last 0.1%. The monster let out a death cry. It echoed throughout the valley where the battle was taking place, so that the entire island could hear it. All the Seekers received a message that the boss was killed by a member of their guild. The army of fish wavered, having lost their leader, and began to flee. The Seekers were confused. Their enemy had treated them nobly and given them the reward. Even the clan leader didn't know what to say. His jaw still couldn't find its way home. Kai decided to show off and grinned at everyone. The raid was over. His move had a positive effect, and now the Seekers considered him a just hero. Kai's friends congratulated him on his victory. They were glad that they remained alive. Their instructor, putting his hand on his heart, acknowledged the strength of a true hero. Han was proud of her great captain. Now everyone knew how cool they were. At the same time, the searchers' opinions about their superiors swung in the other direction. The head of the clan tried to reason with them, but this caused even more discontent. Everyone realized how petty and greedy he was. The eldest heir warned that things were bad. Since 200,000 people refused to carry out the order, things could get even worse. The clan leader gritted his teeth in anger. He was furious. He had been outplayed, and he promised to remember it. He told his son to leave. Revenge would have to be left for later, when there would not be so many eyes full of the euphoria of victory nearby. Fan extended his hand to him. Now he became the hero's debtor, and he asked casually what Kai's current characteristics were. And he said that the effect was temporary, and soon all the points would fly off. While they were talking about the details of the battle and their abilities, they did not notice the horror that was reaching out to them from the abyss. Unexpectedly for himself, Kai found himself captured by tentacles, and the story abruptly changed genre. Before he could do anything, the octopus's tentacles dragged him into the abyss. They wrapped the boy tightly so that he couldn't move. Fan looked into the abyss with concern. Even though death was a common occurrence in this virtual world, it was still hard to get used to. He informed Han, who had approached, that her captain had most likely taken the boss's revenge upon himself. This is a unique skill that activates after the boss dies, and usually it always succeeds, just like a curse. The Seeker will suffer terrible torments until the death of the virtual body. After this experience, people should not be left alone at home with a shotgun. Han was horrified to realize what outcome awaited her captain. He woke up in a strange place where a deathly green light was burning, and tentacles were tightly squeezing him from all sides. The monster became a ghost, so it could freely penetrate inside his body. Kai felt pain, and worse, the system informed him that he would soon lose his stat points due to the skill being cancelled. The monster was slowly sucking the power out of him, which meant that once it ran out, his life would end too. The boss activated his revenge and was eager to kill the hero. Kai jerked sharply and tore apart the ghostly tentacles, after which he landed at the bottom of the gorge. He had a few seconds left to deal with the creepy ghost of a fat fish. The hero's body weakened, and he himself could not cope with the monster. At the last second of the skill's action, he threw all his daggers at the ghost. A blinding flash of flame dispersed the darkness of the gorge. Luckily, the crit worked and the ghost disappeared, as did his throne in that place. The spirit of the system congratulated him on saving him from the boss's posthumous revenge. Now his treasures were available to him. Behind the ice throne was the gate to the treasury of the Fish Kingdom. The spirit of the system reported that there were only 10 minutes left before the entire dungeon collapsed, so he should take as many treasures with him as possible. Already the second countdown, Kai became indignant. The system did not allow him to relax. If he dies here, he won't be able to take the treasure with him. They can only be obtained by getting out of this place, the spirit said, and disappeared. It all started at that very moment. The walls shook and began to collapse. There wasn't much choice left, so Kai leaned against the heavy doors. When he went inside, he saw literally mountains of gold. Among the treasures were also found potions that increased characteristics. Without thinking, the hero emptied them in one volley. There was little time, and he put everything into dexterity, after which he began to fill his pockets with secret chests. Then another notification popped up which said that the chests would only last for 90 seconds. This made the hero move his loaves with all his might. 90 seconds later, Kai had used up all of his stamina. Among other things, there were also tears of repentance, since he no longer had to worry about the abnormal status of a player killer. Already on the way out, Kai came across a strange scroll on the altar. It was a special transmutation formula that allowed one to change class at level 20. It was not possible to organize a funeral ceremony. There was no body, but they arranged a farewell. Han and Yuan were preparing for the worst. Kai had not appeared for too long, which meant he could not avoid posthumous revenge. But then Han heard a rustling sound from below and decided that it was another Fishman crawling. He and Yuan began throwing stones to drive away the monster that was disturbing the farewell ceremony. Because of this, Kai, who had been climbing for so long, fell into the abyss again. When they heard the stream of curses, they shuddered, recognizing the captain's voice. Afterwards, he chased after them for a long time in order to properly teach his overzealous comrades a lesson. Kai smiled sweetly and said that he hadn't seen them for a long time. But Han didn't buy into that smile because the captain was holding his daggers in his hand. He was still angry because he had climbed up with such difficulty. At the base of the 18th gate of the Phantom Star, a meeting was underway. Commander Wei listened to the report of his deputies. They were unable to establish contact with Kai, but they learned about his one-time skill. Wei chuckled. Of course, a level 20 newbie couldn't gain so much power on his own, otherwise the role of veterans would lose its meaning. However, Lu countered that anyone who fell under the curse of a slain boss would be destroyed. Shen agreed with him. It was unlikely that anyone could withstand such torture. But Old Man Wei thought the opposite, that the usual calculation would not work with this guy. It is quite possible that Kai not only survived, but also got his hands on the monster's treasure. In the entire history of conquering the Phantom Star, there were only a few who were able to survive something like this, all of them outstanding personalities. It's been 50 years, Shen said. A mere guy is definitely not capable of keeping up with them. He only registered on the Ghost Star a month ago. The probability of surviving revenge is 0, but Wei's instinct told him that everything was completely different. At that moment, Lan burst into their office and reported that someone had registered new products. It wasn't that opening an auction required the commander-in-chief's attention, but Lan wouldn't bother him just like that. Jiang Kai not only survived, but also opened a trading post on the Phantom Star. The amount was 400 million credits. For this amount, Kai provided a lot of rare materials, which amazed his deputies. Wei laughed triumphantly. He didn't stop believing in the guy. But Lan told him that the troubled Huang family wanted to talk to him. After selling so many goods, the hero's head was spinning, but Han reminded him that he had made a fortune. Despite the previous setup, the fair hero still had something in store for his team. He gave Han an ice elemental skill, Yuan a shield, and also gave them a few items that increased their stat points. There were 2 ways to increase stats on the Ghost Star. Special skill books that could be found in chests, but they were guarded by monsters. Another way was a special item that increased the skill level, which he found in the chest. It was called the Page of Eternal Remnant. These things were universal and therefore incredibly valuable on the market. Kai gave them a few. In their eyes, he appeared as if he were the master of all the money in the world. The hamsters immediately began to praise their master. Han promised to pray for his health every day. They made a real circus of this praise, so he was very embarrassed. The eldest heir of the Huang family noticed this and immediately began to taunt and mock the guy, calling him a savage without shame or conscience. Kai immediately recognized a member of a vile family whose heads had been turned by power. He warned Kai in a threatening tone not to relax under the protection of the military, and he promised to kill him next time in the guild war. Then everyone will see how useless the hero really is. And when the army stops covering him, his days will be numbered. But the guy didn't understand at all what they were talking about and asked his comrades. Han explained to him that it was a competition to choose the best guild. A minimum of level 21 is required to participate, with each guild sending one team of 5 people of the appropriate rank. The military generously rewards the top 3 places in these competitions. The hero was very surprised. He had no intention of participating in this competition, however. He still had a lot of things to do, and he left it for later. Arriving on Earth, the first thing he did was visit his brother, who had successfully undergone the operation and brought gifts. True, there were so many of them that they had to take up an entire ward. Because of all this high cost, the older brother felt embarrassed and promised to help with money as soon as he got back to work. But Kai told him to throw away all that modesty. He reminded his brother that he once dreamed of becoming a seeker who could fight. As soon as he is discharged, he will have such a chance, he promised his brother. Returning to the Ghost Star required considerable funds. Of course, the older brother was worried. But instead of 1,000 words, the younger one simply showed him his balance. That's how much he had tapped out, so they wouldn't have to work anymore. The brother was taken aback, not immediately understanding what kind of order this was. Thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of credits. The reality of success hit him suddenly, so hard to believe. All this time he had worked hard for the younger one to succeed. Kai did not forget that his brother saved him and helped him grow up, sacrificing his health. So now he could pave his own way to the veteran seeker. Even with a weak body on Earth, it was possible to survive on the Ghost Star, so Kai told his brother not to worry. After leaving the hospital, I thought about how to celebrate my success. But it turned out that Deputy Commander Lu had already arrived for him and told him to sit down quickly. Kai was in a hurry to meet his sister from school and asked him what happened. Lu's face became more serious, and he said that that was exactly why they were here. His eyes widened as soon as Kai heard that his sister had been in an accident. After he arrived at the place, he immediately ran to look for Yingzi's little sister. Luckily, she was okay and quickly called out to him. There was a minor accident. Her bus collided with a car. But she wasn't hurt because she was saved by a guy who was driving next to her, and it turned out he knew Kai. When he looked at him, he immediately recognized Fan, with whom he had defeated the boss. It was a truly amazing meeting because Fan was a veteran. Deputy Lu said that none of this was a coincidence. The entire accident was staged by the Huang clan. It was a very serious accusation, so Kai waited for details. The hatred of this clan has not gone away. They even started a raid on the boss, just to destroy one single seeker. The army makes various concessions on this issue in order to continue to cover for Kai, but Commander Wei cannot leave things as they are. In their final negotiations, they agreed that if Kai lost the guild competition, the army would stop protecting him. The pressure from the Huang clan was enormous, so that was all that Kai Wei could get for this meeting. So he must take part in this team competition or be left without protection. The Huang clan would definitely reach his sister or brother. Kai presented a grim prospect. The cold rage that gripped him almost made him bite his lips. The Huang clan became a thorn in Kai's side. They acted in a mean manner, so the army could not openly intercede for Kai. Shen said that he now had 2 chairs to sit on. The younger one asked them if the army would be able to protect the family in this case. Lu believed that in the military, he had more opportunities to cover his own people because his class was so valuable. However, Kai was not so sure about this. You can join the service and relax, but for those who do not honor the law, this means nothing. It's easy to imagine the Huang clan crossing the line and exploiting his weaknesses. If he disappoints the military, he will lose everything at once, but will still be in debt. However, things weren't so bad now, even though he couldn't compete in wealth with an entire clan. But his talent is doubling the attribute points for each level, which means it will be easy to fight against his rank. Kai has repeatedly defeated stronger opponents, sticking to his strategy and dealing them a fatal blow. Instead of hiding in the bushes, their conflict with the Huang clan should have been openly confronted and defeated in front of everyone. Lu took Kai's silence as a sign of agreement and promised to prepare the transfer documents. But Kai decided to take part in the competition, although he didn't have enough people. Lu tried to convince him that by taking part in the battle, he would inevitably encounter the Huang clan. But as before, Kai wanted to control his own destiny, so he firmly declared that he would participate in the competition. Lu took these words for impulsiveness. After all, the guy was young. However, Shen liked this confidence. He fully supported the guy and believed that he was worthy. Fan also supported him because he was Kai's debtor. Together, they could resist the Huang clan. The younger one succumbed to the general wave and joined in the statements. Lu grabbed his head. Everyone seemed to have lost their minds and succumbed to the influence of the young seeker. Fan and Shen also found a common language. Real men preferred to speak with force. Lu had no choice but to join this madness. He followed Commander Wei's orders. This was good news because during the preparation period, the hero did not have to worry about the safety of his family during this time. All 3 defenders looked at the guy and waited for him to say something. Kai slapped his fist and promised to come to their aid when needed. In the evening, they went with the youngest to look at the new house. Since the Huang clan was persecuting them, they could not live in the slums any longer. When they walked inside, she was speechless. It was a luxurious, elite home. The little girl didn't know what to say because it was her first time in a house like this. The huge house had everything she needed, and her room was now almost the size of their squalid apartment. Kai asked his sister if she liked the new house. The girl still couldn't believe it and thought it was a dream. The place was very beautiful. He stroked her head. This is truly their home. Moreover, this is the very beginning of their life changing completely. The next day, Ju and Nuan were waiting for the new captain. They were upset, thinking that they had disappointed the command. But then the frontman of this story appeared and asked them what was wrong with their faces. He was appointed their captain. Ju was very surprised and grabbed his friend by the shoulders. Kai explained that he had not joined the service, but that they would work together temporarily, and in a month he would take part in a team competition. He briefly described to them the situation with the Huang clan and why he had to defeat them there, and asked for help from his friends. Hearing of the clan's injustices, Ju became filled with righteous anger and promised to help. But he was still surprised that Kai wanted to take them into the team. The army had a complex system for evaluating seekers, and they were constantly tested. If a newcomer fails to rise from a lower rank within a year, he is discarded. Now Ju and Nuan have been demoted from middle to lower. Frankly speaking, understanding the responsibility, his friend was worried that he might let him down, but Kai replied that everything was fine, and there was no need to worry. They had only just recently left the newbie zone, and besides, the captain had to be level 15, Nuan reminded. Han appeared and said that their team had already reached level 20, and Kai was thinking about changing classes. Now that the whole team was assembled, he could introduce them to each other. Han greeted them warmly and said that her class was fortune teller. Yuan followed her example and also introduced himself, saying that he was the drunken master. And then it dawned on the guys that Kai was already at level 20, and they were only at level 9, even though they had trained together. That's why Kai promised that he would quickly pull up his comrades. They should be in the best shape for the battle with the Huang clan. The girls on the team quickly found a common language, so everything should go like clockwork. Nuan suggested that they immediately come up with a name for their team, and Ju suggested calling themselves the Gods of Fire, remembering Kai's power. With this in mind, we decided to gather strength and leave these lands tomorrow for special training. The team shouted out in unison, "Yes!" and the hero was pleased with his squad. When they left, Kai watched Ju go and remembered their trip together to the training area. Then he saw how his comrade was nervous, although all the hardships were already behind him. There were only a few hours left until the finish line, after which they could rest. Ju was worried that he would never be able to realize the talent he had received, the heart of a warrior. It was surprising to hear, because he had shown himself well in the battle with monsters and protected everyone well. Ju was constantly struggling with his fear, and it took a lot of his energy. And in order to activate the skill, you had to become fearless and believe in your invincibility. This talent provided bonuses to stats, especially to threshold level crossing. In addition, the warrior's heart gave additional skills: resistance, destruction of armor. But the damage from the attack depended on the degree of courage of the fighter. That is why Kai saw the main goal as strengthening his friend's courage and developing his talents. Kai also wanted to improve his skills using the residual cards on the ghost's eye. Additionally, he asked the system spirit to enhance his card throwing skill, as that was his main ability. The goddess of the system accepted the order and increased his 2 main skills. The system pleased him that the skills now had additional properties. The goddess said that in gambling it is not enough to have dexterous hands. You also need to be able to confuse your opponent. Now he could deceive the perception of a mentally weak opponent, and the hero wanted to try it out in battle as soon as possible. The next day they arrived at the dragon's picturesque domain. Unlike other regions, this one looked picturesque. Ju became worried because there were quite a lot of level 25 lizards here. Han answered him that dragons are social creatures and there should be at least 100 of them here. And Han added 50 of them, definitely of a combat level. It seemed she enjoyed seeing the newcomer's fear. The chances of encountering a combat monster were not that high. They appeared rarely, but it was still no wonder that Ju was nervous. Nuan believed in his abilities. On the island, Kai destroyed the boss. But this time he was not alone. The risk was high. Kai told her that simply leveling up wouldn't help them bond as a team. Only risk would motivate them to develop. Moreover, the materials in such areas are very good. There was a chance that here they would get what they needed to improve the healer and the drunken master, as well as the martial artist. The level 20 promotion materials were a huge reward. Han asked in surprise if Kai was still affected by his player killer effect, but he preferred to keep everything a secret. Of course, he had already gotten rid of the status. After a short discussion, their squad moved deeper into the forest. Kai noticed tracks on the trees and told everyone to be careful. They had entered monster territory. Ju asked the drunken master how he dealt with the Banshee ghost, because she was creepy. But Yuan didn't overcome fear. He simply didn't feel it, so Ju immediately wanted to learn. Then Yuan handed him a particularly strong brewed tea, which had a good effect. Ju took the flasks and thanked his comrade, but Yuan warned him that he had not drunk much during the battle. Kai was the first to notice the threat and ordered everyone to move, while he himself jumped up. As usual, the huge monster attacked them completely silently. It was a level 25 armored dragon. Kai performed a superhero landing after his jump. The dragon saw the prey close by and immediately rushed towards it. But this time he didn't run away and took out his daggers. But then he changed his mind about attacking. Kai hadn't practiced his skills yet, and besides, he shouldn't have died from the monster's blow. Everyone was scared to see that he was just waiting for the monster to attack and was not doing anything. Despite his fear, Ju could not abandon his friend in trouble, so he went on the attack himself. He used his skills and hit the lizard with both hands, causing the dragon to arch. But despite the powerful blow, the thick-skinned beast quickly recovered and counterattacked. To prevent him from eating the guy, Kai stabbed him with his daggers. But he deliberately left some health on the lizard so that Ju could deliver the finishing blow. Ju pulled out a sword from his inventory and screamed as he stabbed it into the dragon's body. He closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them, the lizard was dead. After all this, he breathed a sigh of relief. These huge creatures had jumped out too suddenly. Ju hit his friend in the shoulder because Kai was distracted and almost died, but it was his job to cover everyone. The good man was again surprised that he was entrusted with such an important role, because everyone knew that he was a coward by nature. Nuon praised him for his bravery. In his previous team, the guy didn't show initiative. The boy immediately became proud of himself from the stream of praise and encouragement. After that, they found the hideout of the elite armored dragons, each of whom had level 35 here. These 3 beasts were in turn guarded by battle dragons. The rough terrain did not make for an easy battle. With the help of the ghost hand, Kai had killed many fishmen in the past, so he hoped that this time everything would work out too. He asked Han to summon rain within 10 minutes, which she was able to do thanks to the improvement of her techniques. Kai told his friend to run ahead as soon as it started to rain. He was just supposed to hold off the animals. Within minutes, the sky became cloudy. Thunder rumbled, and the first drops of warm rain fell from the sky. At Kai's signal, Ju rushed to attack across the slippery and wet grass. The dragons suspected something was wrong and emerged from their hiding places. As expected, there were also quite a few ordinary lizards here. Ju moved towards them to cover the team. He used Earthquake to immobilize everyone at once. Kai decided to try a new technique that doubled his strength for 10 seconds. The gamer's attack, his eyes lit up with power like all real heroes. Kai swung his arms wide and caused a fiery chain of explosions. In one fell swoop, he eliminated 9 lizards at once. With such strength, their team will definitely become the best. Everyone liked how Ju threw the dragons up and Kai attacked the vulnerable belly. Having finished off the wounded in one fell swoop, Ju reached level 10. After that, they had no problems with the rest of the animals. Their combat coordination immediately brought out the best in each of them. Nuon was surprised that in just an hour, Ju was able to level up under his friend's guidance. She knew that success would come, but she didn't think that it would happen so soon, and she also wanted to become stronger. Later, they decided to look for a special treasure chest, and then they proceeded to the area where the armored warrior dragon lived. Ju suggested that the captain take a rest, since they had spent a lot of energy. But the hero refused. He still had the strength to move and began to think which path to choose. They could not hesitate because their target might call for reinforcements. But even after 10 minutes of invading the boss's area, they didn't meet anyone. Even with the help of the ghost's eye, the battle dragon was not visible, and Kai already thought that he had miscalculated. Ju lost his courage and shivered as if from the cold. The further he went, the more anxious he became. Han continued to tease the young man and said that he was still far from being the boss. When they came out into the open, they saw that the lowland was covered in thick fog. There was clearly something wrong with this place, so Kai ordered everyone to stop. The team stared at him in surprise. They didn't notice anything. But then there was a deafening and powerful blow and everyone scattered. They narrowly escaped a devastating ambush attack. Then, an armored level 51 dinosaur crawled out from behind the rock. The team almost got hurt because the monster merged with the stone. Kai threw the daggers and shouted at Nuon to use poison. The girl obediently carried out the command with the help of her watch. The daggers pierced straight into the target, but the front of his body was covered with plates of bone armor. But despite this, the monster still received 2 crits at once. Even one dealt huge damage, and here there were 2 at once, so the team was happy. The stronger the monster, the higher the reward. But as their power grows, Kai is fully focused on the fight.